Welcome to my storytelling channel. Today, we will embark on a story called Death Experience. A journey tinged with death, mystery, and gates not for the faint of heart. Before we begin, what time are you listening to the story? Are you sitting in a warm room or next to a flickering fireplace? Leave a comment so you know you are not alone tonight. And now, turn down the lights. Put on your headphones. Listen to the sound of rain and the whispers from the darkness. The story begins. March 12, 2025. Dublin, Ireland. It had been raining for 3 days straight. Cold drops clung to the attic window of the Rosecliff Hotel, where historian Dr. Eric Morven, 46, lit his 8th cigarette of the morning. He wasn't superstitious by nature, but something about the strange email he received last night kept him wide awake. BBC documentary crew missing during filming on Skellig Michael. We need you to investigate. $500,000 contract, 50% upfront, absolute confidentiality. Meet at 10 a.m. March 12th, the Rosecliff Hotel, room 607 No signature. Attached, a scan of a military permit granting access to a restricted area and a detailed map of Skellig Michael, a remote, jagged island famous for being a filming location for Star Wars. The Force Awakens, but once home to a 6th century monastic settlement cloaked in blood and legend. When Eric knocked on room 607, the door was already slightly ajar. Inside, a round table with 12 thick black folders and a man in a grey suit, no name tag, cold eyes like Irish fog. Dr. Morven, please sit. You're here because you're the leading expert on ancient Ogham and Celtic symbology. Skellig may be the site of a long-buried ritual. I don't work for governments, Eric replied. I'm a historian, not a ghost hunter. The film crew vanished, Eric. No trace, no bodies. We recovered their final footage. You should see it. He pressed play. The screen flickered. Grainy footage of an actor dressed as a monk chanting Latin inside a stone chapel. Wind howled off camera. The camera shook. Static. Then, one final frame before darkness. A face, eyeless, grinning wide. The man placed an envelope before Eric, thick with cash. You don't have to believe. Just go. Decode the symbols. We'll have armed support. Absolute safety. Eric exhaled a long stream of smoke. Who's leading the expedition? Gabriel Dawn, ex-French Special Forces, served in Mali. Good. Eric nodded. I don't work with cowards. 3 days later, Port Magee Harbor, Western Ireland. The sea wind cut like knives. A disguised fishing vessel, the Orpheus, waited dockside. A fitting name, like the Greek hero who once walked into hell itself. On deck stood the team. Eric Morven, historian. Gabriel Dawn, leader, ex-military. Lucia Hernandez, Spanish underwater archaeologist. Father Eli McBride, a priest from Belfast. Niels Kruger, quiet German mercenary. Mila Korovin, Russian sound technician sent to retrieve lost recording gear. Thierry Bonnet, the only survivor of the lost film crew with no memory of what happened. 5 others, each with secrets and silent reasons for accepting the invitation. Gabriel addressed the group. We reach Skellig at dawn. We're armed. We have the maps. Objective, discover the fate of the missing crew. Analyze the monastic site. We stay no more than 48 hours. No jokes, no smiles. Even the seagulls had abandoned the skies. Lucia muttered. Locals say the island is cursed. That frozen holy blood runs beneath its rocks. Eric didn't look at her. Curses are only dangerous if you believe. I believe in evidence. Thierry stood alone at the bow, staring at nothing. Since being found on the shore, bloody hands and hollow eyes, he hadn't spoken a word. That night, on board dinner. In the ship's mess hall, warm food did little to break the chill. A strange noise echoed from the storage hold below. Gabriel and Niels went to check. There, in the center of the room, a shattered obsidian mirror. No one knew how it got there. Eric's eyes widened. This isn't modern glass. It's obsidian, volcanic glass, used in ancient Celtic soul transfer rituals. Lucia shivered. Who brought it aboard? No answer. Gabriel ordered it thrown overboard immediately. But just then, the lights cut out. In the dark, Thierry began giggling, a dry, rasping laugh like burnt lungs. They'll wait for you. At the gates of hell, beneath the tower, he whispered. Lights snapped back on. Thierry collapsed, unconscious. A new mark burned into his forehead, a circle with 3 eyes, seared into the skin. At dawn, the Orpheus sailed towards Skellig Michael. Black cliffs rose like teeth from the sea. 700 ancient stone steps twisted toward the peak, where wind and blood had mingled for centuries. Eric closed his eyes. In the wind, he could almost hear a whisper. Welcome back to where the sin began. Skellig Michael, 6:02 AM Day 1. Waves slammed against the cliffs of Skellig Michael as the Orpheus anchored in a narrow inlet. The team disembarked into 2 inflatable rafts, rowing in silence. The morning mist clung to them like spider webs, shrouding the path ahead. Eric stepped onto the first stone stair. The ancient steps were slick with algae and time. Above them, the jagged rocks spiraled into the fog like broken fangs. Up, Gabriel ordered. We reached the monastery before noon. They climbed in single file, 12 in total. A number Eric found disturbingly poetic. As they climbed, Eric mentally recited the names, their roles, and what little he knew of their pasts. He had a historian's instinct. Names mattered. Gabriel Dawn, French ex-Special Forces, expedition leader. Stone-faced, rumored to have executed his own squad mate in Mali for insubordination. Eric Morvan, historian. The only one on the team who had studied the religious inscriptions from Skellig's pagan period before the monks arrived. Lucia Hernandez, underwater archaeologist. Brilliant, ambitious, and possibly reckless. She lost her brother on a dive in Crete. He was never found. Father Eli McBride, priest, age 67. Volunteer from the Catholic Diocese of Belfast. Carried a wooden crucifix and a flask of holy water. Had a nervous twitch in his left hand. Mila Korovin, Russian technician. Emotionless. She once worked for a classified submarine acoustics program. Her reason for being here was unclear. Niels Kruger, German mercenary. Veteran of private security in the Congo and Libya. He carried 2 suppressed handguns and never removed his gloves. Thierry Bonnet, former director of the Lost Film Crew. He had spoken no words since being rescued. Now he carried only a small leather-bound journal and stared into nothing. Dr. Caleb Voss, medical doctor from Norway. His files said he specialized in trauma cases. His eyes told a different story, like he had seen something unexplainable. Ria Sen, Indian geologist. She had studied seismic activity on the island last year and reported strange underground shifts. Her warnings had been ignored. Paul Reyes, drone operator. American. Too young, too eager. He treated the trip like an action movie. He would be the first to panic, Eric guessed. James Finlay, British logistician, brought to manage equipment and satellite feeds. Hated being outdoors. Probably allergic to dirt. Henrik Dahl, Swedish linguist, specialist in dead languages, fluent in Ogham and ancient Norse. Suffered from night terrors. Took sleeping pills like candy. By 9 a.m. they reached the stone beehive huts at the monastery. Wind whistled through the ruins. The structures, over 1,000 years old, looked untouched by time. Or perhaps untouched because something protected them. Lucia touched the walls. This isn't normal erosion. These stones, they've been cleaned. Cleaned? Eric frowned. Polished, recently. Gabriel unslung his rifle. No one is supposed to be here. They split into pairs to investigate the structures. Eric and Father Eli entered the chapel, a small stone room with a collapsed ceiling. Eric moved toward the altar. On its surface, someone had etched a new symbol into the rock, a spiral surrounding an eye. The iris, a triquetra, a Celtic knot of eternity. Father Eli went pale. I've seen this. Once. In Rome, a Vatican vault. It was marked on a cursed manuscript. Eric nodded grimly. It's not just Celtic. It's older. Outside, Thierry wandered toward the cliff edge. Paul Reyes followed him, trying to get drone footage of the waves crashing below. Dude, don't go too close, Paul warned. Thierry stopped at the edge. Slowly, he opened his journal. Pages flipped wildly in the wind. Paul glimpsed a page. There was a drawing of the monastery, but with figures kneeling in black robes, bleeding from the eyes. Suddenly, Thierry whispered, "The tower is not what it seems. It drinks memory." Paul's smile faded. "What?" Thierry turned. His eyes bled. The scream echoed through the entire cliffside. Gabriel and Niels arrived first. Paul lay at the edge, his face twisted in shock, his neck snapped clean. Thierry stood above him, motionless, his hands dripping. But there was something else. A new etching appeared on the stone beneath Paul's body, glowing faintly, as if carved by fire. "That symbol," Henrik whispered. "It's a summoning mark." Eric stared down. A second death. The first among them. 11 now. Gabriel raised his gun at Thierry, but Father Eli stopped him. "No, he's not the killer. Not truly. He's just the vessel." The wind howled again. From the cliffs below, a voice echoed. "Not human, not wind. One life pays for one gate." The team gathered in the monastery's courtyard. The wind had shifted, colder now, laced with salt and something faintly metallic. 11 pairs of eyes stared at Thierry Bonnet. He stood motionless, blood drying on his hands, his eyes wide and vacant. Gabriel lowered his weapon slowly. "Tie him. We'll question him later." Niels moved forward without a word, zip-tying Thierry's wrists with clinical efficiency. Thierry offered no resistance, only whispered, "It's watching from the tower." The others didn't reply. The tower didn't exist, at least not on any known map. Skellig Michael had no such structure, only the jagged crag rising from the western edge of the island, too sheer to climb, too unstable to drone scan. And yet, the word had now been spoken twice. First in the journal, now from Thierry's mouth. Eric pulled Lucia aside. "You saw the stone, that symbol. We need to know what it means." Now, Lucia hesitated. "It's not just a summoning, it's a binding, and a warning." "A warning for what?" She lowered her voice. "That we're already too late." They heard the drone buzz overhead. Reyes' drone, still active, circling autonomously. James Finlay piloted it down. He looked pale. "Get everyone inside," Gabriel ordered. We regroup. They entered one of the monastic stone huts. It was tight, dark, the air stale. Father Eli lit a lantern. Its flame flickered violently, though there was no breeze inside. "We should leave," James said quietly. "Paul's dead. Thierry is possessed or insane, and this island is—" "No one's leaving," Gabriel cut in. "Not yet. We find the source. We finish the mission." Henrik sat in the corner, rubbing his temples. "The symbols are proto-Ogham, pre-Christian, but they've been altered. Twisted." Rhea looked up from her tablet. "I picked up microseismic activity from the western ridge. It matches no tectonic signature I've ever seen. The ground isn't shifting. Something beneath it is. Breathing." A silence fell over the room. Then the drone feed cut out. Everyone turned to James. He stared at the controller. "Signal's gone. Drone's offline." Gabriel stood. "We moved to the ridge. Now." The ascent was brutal. The western crag was not meant to be climbed. Rocks broke loose underfoot. Wind screamed between narrow passes. It took them 40 minutes to reach the crest. What they found wasn't a tower. Not in the traditional sense. It was a spire of black stone, twisted like melted glass, at least 30 feet tall, protruding from the earth like a blade stabbed into the cliff. "No satellite picked this up?" Eric asked. James shook his head. "This wasn't here last year, I swear." Lucia approached the base. "This isn't volcanic. This is constructed." "By what? Or whom?" She didn't say. Henrik muttered. "The symbols continue here. They're prayers, inverted, as if begging something not to come back." Suddenly, Mila spoke. The first words anyone had heard from her in hours. "It's a seal. It was never meant to be found." A low sound echoed from the spire, like iron screaming. A vibration rippled through the stone beneath their feet. The sky darkened, and then someone screamed behind them. Thierry had collapsed, frothing at the mouth, limbs jerking violently. Henrik and Caleb rushed to restrain him, but the ground beneath him cracked, a black vein forming in the stone, glowing faintly red. "Step back," Gabriel shouted, but too late. A second symbol burst into fire beneath Thierry's body, a spiral of flame that rotated counterclockwise. His eyes snapped open. "Gate 2 is open." Then silence. His body went limp. Father Eli whispered, horrified. "The seals are breaking. 1 death per gate." Eric felt the weight of it now. This was no ordinary island, no mere expedition. Something ancient had been locked here, and now something ancient was waking. The body of Thierry Bonnet was laid on the cold stone near the edge of the cliff, away from the others. No one volunteered to bury him. The wind had changed again. Heavier now, as if saturated with breath. Not human breath, but something older, thicker. Lucia stood by the black spire, hands trembling. "I translated the rest of the script on the stone," she said. "The gates. There are 7. Eric's face turned pale. 7 deaths. Father Eli nodded grimly. 7 seals. 7 sacrifices. Gabriel didn't flinch. "We're not dying here. That thing, whatever it is not coming through." But even as he said it, the spire pulsed with a red glow, like a heartbeat. By nightfall, the team split into 2 groups, one to return to the monastery for shelter, the other to guard the ridge and the black spire. Gabriel chose to stay behind with Eric, Lucia, and Henrik. They built a crude perimeter using ropes and motion sensors. Nothing high-tech worked now. Not radios, not satlinks, not even digital watches. Time had started behaving strangely. Lucia stared at the spire. "This thing distorts space, maybe even causality. We're in its field." Henrik muttered. "The Orgum isn't just religious. It's functional. Some kind of language of containment." "Then who contained it?" Eric asked. No one had an answer. Midnight came with no stars. The fog rolled in. Thick, gray, blinding. It swallowed their camp within minutes. The ropes disappeared. The sensors went dark. Then they heard footsteps. Heavy, measured, deliberate. "Don't move," Gabriel whispered. Shapes passed by them, not animals, not people. Shadows, walking upright, tall and hunched, as if wearing human skins like clothes too tight. No eyes, no mouths. Just presence. Lucia closed her eyes and began whispering in Latin. Old prayers. Not Christian, older than that. The shadows paused. One turned. Eric felt his knees weaken. Its face was a blank slate. Flesh stretched over bone with no features, no identity, only intent. Henrik aimed his flare gun and fired. A searing red light exploded in the fog. The creature screeched, a wet, gurgling roar, and vanished into the mist. "Move!" Gabriel yelled. They ran. By the time they reached the monastery, 2 were missing, Henrik and Lucia. Caleb and Niels helped barricade the main hall with stones and benches. The door shook once, then went still. Nothing followed. Inside, silence ruled. Father Eli sat cross-legged, scribbling into his old Bible. James checked the drone footage, still offline. Rhea stared at the flames, then a thump on the roof. One, then two. Something landed. Caleb raised his weapon. Above us, a sound like nails on stone echoed down the chimney. Something long and thin slid into the fire pit. A finger, not human. Then a voice. No mouth, just air, vibrating, whispered in dead Latin. You opened it. Gate 2 is broken. The 3rd sleeps. Mila screamed. Outside, on the cliffs, Lucia opened her eyes. Blood ran from her ears. Henrik knelt beside her, breathing heavily. It didn't kill us, she said. It showed us. Henrik looked haunted. It's not trying to escape. It's trying to... Remember, Lucia touched the ground, and it's using us to do it. The morning never came. Time passed, but the sky remained locked in a dim twilight. No sunrise, no bird song. Only the low, pulsing hum that now echoed from the black spire like a heartbeat under the ground. In the monastery, no one spoke for a long time. The fear had grown teeth. Caleb counted supplies. We have food for maybe 5 days. Water's low. The generator's dead. James stared at his hands. The footage from last night, it's gone, like the drones never recorded. Mila sat by the window, watching the forest below. Henrik and Lucia, they're not dead. I feel it. Gabriel stood up, exhausted. We have to find them, and we have to understand what this thing wants before it finds another gate. Father Eli lifted his head slowly. I think it already has. Far from the monastery, Henrik and Lucia stumbled through a broken forest trail. Trees twisted unnaturally, their bark blackened as if burnt from the inside. The deeper they went, the more the ground pulsed. Lucia spoke between breaths. It showed me a memory, not mine, a world before us. A war between things that weren't human. Demons? Henrik asked. No. Older than that. Older than language. They built prisons inside the earth. This place is one of them. They reached a clearing. In the center stood a stone figure, half buried in moss. Its face was covered in the same Ogham symbols as the monolith. Lucia approached it and touched the surface. A shock ran through her body. She saw flames, sky torn apart, 7 pillars of light, and one falling into the sea. Back at the monastery, the group debated what to do next. We're trapped, said James. We either dig in or die here. Gabriel shook his head. We fight. We close the gates. If someone built these prisons once, we can reinforce them. But how? Mila asked. With prayers, with rope. Father Eli interrupted. With blood. Everyone turned to him. These seals, they were never meant to last forever. Sacrifices renew them. Eric's face darkened. You mean we kill one of us? No, the priest said, standing. We offer ourselves, but not to die, to bear it. One must enter the gate and carry the burden. Rhea frowned. You want to volunteer to go mad? Or worse, said Eli, to become part of the lock. That night, Lucia and Henrik reached the back of the monastery. The forest had twisted around the cliffs like a snare. They climbed up in silence. The moment they reached the outer wall, the air cracked. Loud, like thunder under skin. Gabriel opened the door. Get in! Behind them, the mist returned, crawling up the stone like fingers. Once inside, the group embraced briefly, then locked every door and window. But it was too late. The fog had entered with them, not through the doors, through the walls. It whispered. The 3rd gate is awake, and under the monastery, something began to breathe. The breathing didn't stop. All night, it continued beneath the monastery. Slow, measured, as if something ancient was waking up in pieces. Each breath felt closer than the last. Gabriel couldn't sleep. He stared at the stone floor, waiting for it to crack open, waiting for something to climb through. At dawn, though no light came, Lucia spoke. I found the 3rd gate, she whispered. In my vision, everyone gathered around. It's below us, she continued. The foundation of this place was built directly over it. Then it's already open, Caleb said. No, Lucia shook her head. It's dreaming, but something is starting to stir. James and Mila scouted the basement. The walls were damp, and mold grew in long streaks along the stone. They found stairs leading deeper than any blueprint had shown. There's no record of this level, Mila said. The steps ended in a narrow tunnel. At the end, a sealed iron door. On it, scratched deep into the metal, was the Ogham symbol for silence. James placed his hand on it. It was warm. Should we open it? Mila asked. Before James could answer, the door began to breathe. Not shake, breathe, as if something behind it had lungs the size of rooms. Mila stepped back in horror. James stared, frozen. Then came the voice. You are already inside. Upstairs, Rhea collapsed. Nose bleeding, she clutched her head and screamed. Get them out. Gabriel rushed to her. What did you see? Not a vision, she whispered. It's not showing me things anymore. It's inside my mind. I can hear it think. What does it want? Asked Eric. Rhea looked at him, and for a moment, her eyes weren't hers. It wants to wake up. Then she fainted. Father Eli called them to the chapel. This monastery was founded in 1471, he said, but there were ruins here before. Roman, Greek, even older. This hill is a burial mound for something that was never alive. He unrolled a parchment, ancient, burned at the edges. The third gate is sealed with thought. It reacts to memory. That's why it's inside your minds. Lucia stepped forward. Then we can trap it again, if we force it to forget. How? Asked Caleb. Eli looked around the room. Someone must enter the gate willingly, carrying a memory powerful enough to distract it, to lock it in its own confusion. Silence. Then Eric said, I'll do it. In the lowest chamber, Eric stood before the iron door. He held a pendant, his brother's, long dead, and closed his eyes. I remember you, he whispered. You died holding my hand. I never said goodbye. The door exhaled. He stepped through. In the chapel, Rhea gasped. He's in. The floor trembled. The spire outside shrieked. And for the first time, the fog screamed. Eric fell. Not down, but inward. The moment he passed through the iron door, the world dissolved. He no longer felt weight, nor breath, nor time, only memory. Not his own, flooding his mind like black water. He saw cities of ash, oceans of glass, towers taller than the sky, all fallen, all silent. And then he heard it, a voice like stone cracking open. You carry the pain of a single life. I carry the death of worlds. Eric gritted his teeth. Then maybe we're not so different. Outside the gate, the monastery trembled violently. Stones cracked. Dust fell from the ceiling. The fog outside pressed against the windows like hands trying to break through. Lucia shouted, He's disturbing it. Whatever it is, it's afraid. Rhea was curled on the chapel floor, whispering in another language. Her voice layered, overlapping itself. James turned to Father Eli. What if he fails? Eli didn't answer. He simply knelt, closed his eyes, and began to pray. Inside the void, Eric moved through memories that weren't his. He stood on a battlefield where the sun bled red into the soil. He walked through a temple made of bone, under skies that never stopped screaming. He heard the names of creatures too large for the world, beings sealed beneath ice, buried under deserts, drowned in black seas. He felt them all. And then he felt something else. Her, a small hand, a voice. Don't be afraid, Eric. His sister, dead 20 years. He turned, saw her face, and for a moment, forgot everything. The gate shuddered. Back in the monastery, Rhea screamed. He's slipping. It's pulling him into a false memory. It's trying to make him forget who he is. Lucia grabbed a stone relic from the altar, a shard carved with ancient words, and ran. I'm going in. James stopped her. Lucia, no. If you go in there, it'll trap you too. She didn't stop. He saved me once. I owe him this. And before anyone could stop her, she vanished through the iron door. Inside the gate, Eric knelt beside the ghost of his sister. She touched his face. You can rest now. He almost believed it. But then another voice cut through. Sharp, real, alive. Eric! Lucia! He turned, and in that moment, the illusion cracked. The world around him, the dream, shattered like glass, and the voice that had lured him in roared. The monastery shook as if the earth itself cried out. The spire burst into flame, and deep below, in the silence between worlds, a door began to close. Lucia stood in the void. Darkness stretched infinitely around her, but it was not empty. It pulsed with thought, memories not her own, faces, voices, screams. And far ahead, she saw Eric, staggering away from the broken illusion. Eric, she called again. He turned, confused, dazed, but his eyes began to clear. You're real, he breathed. She nodded. It almost had you. He glanced around. I saw her. I saw my sister. I know. Lucia held up the stone relic from the altar, the shard of carved words. We can't destroy it, she said, but we can bind it again, trap it in something stronger than fear. Eric took a step toward her, but the ground rippled like water, and then it rose. A shape began to form in the darkness, towering, shifting, unfinished. It had no face, only eyes. Hundreds of them, all blinking in different directions. A body of smoke and bones and memory. It opened its mouth, and from it came nothing. The absence of sound, of meaning, of light. Lucia dropped to one knee. It's the third gate, she whispered. This is what sleeps behind it. The entity moved toward them. Slow, massive, inevitable. Eric stepped in front of her. Let it come. In the monastery, the others braced for collapse. The walls cracked. The wind howled through the halls. Books flew from shelves, pages tearing mid-air. The sky outside turned black as night, though it was barely noon. Father Eli stood in the center of the chapel, arms outstretched. If they fail, he said, this world will forget itself. What do you mean? James shouted over the chaos. Eli turned, tears in his eyes. The gate doesn't open into another place. It opens into unbeing. If it wakes fully, we cease to exist, not die, be erased. In the void, the entity towered over Eric and Lucia. It reached for them. And as its hand passed over their heads, Eric shouted, I remember. The monster paused. I remember every name of every person I've lost. I remember the feel of my brother's hand, the last words of my mother, the scent of autumn rain. The eyes twitched. I remember myself. The shard in Lucia's hand began to glow. She placed it against Eric's chest. The light surged. The entity screamed, not in pain, but in recognition. Then it began to collapse inward, folding into itself, devouring its own form. Lucia cried out, Hold on to your memory. Eric clenched his fists. I won't forget. And the gate closed. In the monastery, the air stilled. The fog peeled back. The sky turned blue again. And deep below, the iron door cooled and fell silent. For a long time, no one spoke. The iron door beneath the monastery had gone cold. The fog had lifted. The world, it seemed, had survived. James was the first to break the silence. Is it over? Father Eli stared at the floor where the gate once pulsed with darkness. No, a door can close, but it can also open again. Lucia helped Eric to his feet. He was pale, shaking, but conscious. I saw it, Eric whispered. What it really is. Lucia looked at him. What is it? A memory of something older than time, something that never should have been remembered. The survivors gathered in the chapel. 6 of them remained, out of 15. The expedition that began as a scientific journey had ended in blood and silence. Rhea traced strange symbols in the air with her fingers, whispering prayers in tongues long forgotten. James sat near a shattered window, staring at the horizon. The fog was alive. I felt it watching us. No, Lucia said. It was part of it, a veil to numb us, make us forget. Rhea turned. It tried to erase you, Eric, but it couldn't. He looked down. I don't think it tried to kill us. Not exactly. What then? Asked Father Eli. It tried to unright us. They decided to seal the monastery. Raya, using old rites, bound the gate with words carved into obsidian and ash. James welded the outer door shut with melted steel. Father Eli stayed behind, refusing to leave sacred ground. I will watch the threshold, he said. If it stirs again, someone must be here to see it. The others gathered their things in silence. Lucia paused at the iron door once more. We left too many behind. We tried, Eric said. But this place, it doesn't follow rules we understand. Lucia didn't answer. She laid one hand on the door, whispered something only she could hear, and left. They hiked for 2 days before finding the edge of the fog. It parted for them like a curtain. When they emerged, the forest looked different, less ancient, less wrong. The birds had returned. So had the sky. At a ranger's outpost, they were met with disbelief. The world had moved on. No one had seen the fog. No one had known they were gone. It had been 6 days since they entered the monastery, but to them, it felt like years. That night, Eric dreamed of the gate again, but this time, he stood outside it, and something, a presence, watched him from within. Not hate, not rage, just waiting. A week later, they gathered again. Not in the monastery, but in a quiet stone house in Switzerland, near the mountains, Lucia had called them. The survivors sat around an old table. Eric, James, Rhea, and a woman none of them recognized. She was pale, with bright green eyes and a voice that trembled slightly when she spoke. My name is Dr. Vivian Marek, she said, and I believe you've all seen something that was never meant to exist. Eric frowned. How do you know about the monastery? Vivian glanced at Lucia. Because it's not the only one. They stared. What do you mean, not the only one? Rhea asked slowly. Vivian set down a leather-bound book. It was ancient. The pages yellowed, the ink faded. This was written by a monk named Renatus in the 14th century, she said. He chronicled visions of gates that open beneath the world, places where reality grows thin. James leaned forward. He saw the gate. He saw one of them, Vivian said. The gate you found is one of 7. The room went still. Eric's voice was hollow. 7, Vivian nodded. Each one buried beneath sacred ground. Ancient churches, forgotten temples, caves no longer on any map. Lucia whispered. How many are still sealed? Vivian hesitated. 2 have already opened. Raya stood, pushing her chair back. Then we need to warn people, governments, the UN, anyone who will listen. Vivian shook her head. They won't believe you. They'll think you're mad. She's right, Lucia added. We tried once before. No one listened. James rubbed his forehead. So what do we do? Just wait for the next gate to crack open? Vivian opened the book again. No, we find them and seal them one by one. Eric looked around the table. You're asking us to go back into that kind of nightmare? Vivian held his gaze. Yes, because if we don't, the world won't end in fire or war. It will end in forgetting. Silence fell again. Lucia finally stood. Then we find the next one. Rhea looked between them. Where is it? Vivian closed the book and whispered a name. Arkhangelsk, far away in the Arctic north of Russia, beneath an abandoned Orthodox cathedral. Something stirred. The ground breathed. And far below, in a space untouched by time, a new gate began to crack. The wind howled across the Russian tundra. Snow fell in thick, soundless sheets. The sky above Arkhangelsk was heavy with cloud, turning day into a pale twilight. The cold was bone deep. Lucia pulled her scarf tighter around her face as their tracked vehicle crawled up the hill. In the distance, the silhouette of the abandoned cathedral loomed like a black wound in the white. No lights, no movement, just the silence of a place forgotten by God. Is this it? Eric asked from the back. Vivian checked her map. Yes, the Church of St. Ileana, deconsecrated in 1918, closed ever since. James stared through the frosted glass. Why does it feel like it's waiting for us? Vivian didn't answer. Inside the cathedral, the air was still. Their footsteps echoed against the cracked tiles. Mold crawled across the walls like veins. An altar, once grand, now lay in splinters. They descended into the crypt. As they moved deeper underground, Rhea whispered, "I can hear it again." Lucia turned. "What?" "The whispering, like in the monastery. It's faint, but it's there." Vivienne knelt beside a wall covered in old Orthodox murals. One had been defaced. A painted angel's face scratched out, replaced with a symbol in ash black. She traced it with her fingers. This wasn't vandalism. It's a warding mark. They tried to seal something in. Eric's breath fogged the air. Did they succeed? Vivienne stood. No. The gate was hidden beneath the crypt floor. A ring of stone etched with the same runes they had seen before. Symbols of forgetting, of erasure. It wasn't glowing. Not yet. But Lucia felt something behind it, like a pressure building just behind her eyes. "Same kind of gate?" James asked. "No," Vivienne replied quietly. "This one's older." "Older than the last one?" Eric asked, wide-eyed. Vivienne nodded. "Yes, and more hungry." Suddenly, the stone beneath them shook. A faint groan echoed through the chamber. The runes flickered with cold blue light. Lucia stepped back. "It's waking up." They scrambled to prepare. Rhea laid protective sigils around the gate. James positioned motion sensors. Eric unpacked the seismic scanner. Vivienne opened her journal, flipping to a hand-drawn diagram. "If the pattern holds, it'll open fully within 24 hours. And if it opens before we're ready?" Lucia asked. Vivienne looked up. "We die." That night, as the temperature dropped below, on 40 degrees, the whispering grew louder. James sat alone, watching the scanner. Then it spiked. The floor trembled. One of the runes flared bright blue, and from the shadows beyond the crypt, something moved. Fast, he stood, flashlight trembling in his grip. "Who's there?" he called out. Silence. Then, from behind him, a voice, his own voice, whispered, "James, you never left." James spun around, flashlight shaking in his hand. Nothing, only stone walls and the flickering echo of his breath. He backed up toward the others, eyes darting through the dark. The whispering had stopped. But in his chest, something cold settled, a weight that didn't belong to the air. Lucia saw him and ran over. "What happened?" James swallowed. "I heard myself, my voice, behind me." Eric looked up from the seismic scanner. "It's starting." Rhea was drawing a final protective circle near the crypt entrance. "If it's copying our voices, it means the gate is bleeding." Vivienne flipped to a new page in her journal. "We're inside its influence now. We won't just hear things. We'll see them too, and some of them will be lies." The hours dragged on. They took turns on watch, never letting the gate out of their sight. The air had begun to pulse. Faint, rhythmic, like the breathing of something beneath stone. At 3:17 a.m., one of the sigils near the floor cracked. No one had touched it. Vivienne stood. "That's not good." Lucia approached slowly. "What broke it?" Vivienne crouched down. "Residual psychic pressure, the gate's testing our wards." Suddenly, all the lights in the crypt went out. A soft click, then darkness. Only the faint blue runes remained, glowing like veins on the floor. They activated emergency lanterns. The moment the light returned, Rhea gasped. There were footprints in the dust, dozens of them, bare feet, child-sized, leading from the gate, circling the group, and vanishing into the far wall. James whispered, "We're not alone." Eric stepped closer to the footprints and froze. These are going the wrong way." Lucia turned. "What do you mean?" "They're not coming from the gate," Eric said, voice dry. "They're going into it." The gate hummed, soft, low, like the sound of something ancient trying to remember its own name. Then, a crack, a piece of stone in the circle split open, revealing a narrow slit of pure black. Not shadow, not darkness. Something deeper. Lucia's knees buckled. She clutched at the wall, eyes wide. Did anyone else feel that? They had. Vivian's voice was trembling. It's showing us what's inside, Rhea muttered. What if it's not a place? Vivian looked at her. Then it's something worse. They had less than 6 hours. Vivian began a ritual of binding using powdered obsidian and salt, forming protective geometry around the gate. James covered the entrance with explosive fail-safes. Eric poured thermite into the cracks in the stone, whispering prayers under his breath. Lucia, meanwhile, stood still. She was staring at the footprints again. They were fading, erasing themselves, as if something was watching her through them. Then, at 6:02 a.m., the humming stopped. The room fell into silence. No light, no breath. Lucia opened her mouth to speak, but the sound didn't come out. They all froze. The gate was wide open, and something inside had noticed them. The silence pressed against them like a hand to the throat. James tried to speak again. Nothing. His voice was gone, swallowed by the stillness around them. Lucia waved at him, eyes wide, trying to form the word, run. Then, movement. From within the gate, something slithered. Not flesh, not shadow. Ripples in the fabric of the room, as if the stone itself bent inwards. It crawled from the blackness like a thought, forcing its way into a mind that didn't want it. Rhea grabbed Vivian and pulled her back. James hit the detonator. Boom. The blast echoed through the crypt. But when the smoke cleared, the thing was still there, unburnt, unmoved. Watching, the silence cracked. With a sound like ice splitting on a lake, a scream erupted, but not from their mouths. From the walls, muffled voices bled from the stone as if the cathedral itself was crying out in pain. Lucia stumbled backwards, holding her ears. "Make it stop! Please make it stop!" Vivian threw a vial of consecrated ash at the gate. It hissed, not from pain but irritation. The shape twisted, stretching upward. It now had a face, not one, many. Dozens of human faces flickered across its surface, like the surface of water. Screaming, laughing, begging. Dead. One of them was James. James fell to his knees. "That's my face." Eric screamed, not from fear. From behind him, a hand had burst from the floor and grabbed his leg. Lucia ran to help, pulling at his arms. Rhea slashed the hand with a silver blade. It hissed and dissolved like smoke. But more were coming. The gate had opened the threshold between dimensions, and now the dead had found the door. James picked up his rifle. "We need to close it, now." Vivian poured salt across the floor in the shape of a burning circle. She reached into her coat and pulled out the black relic they had taken from the Tibetan monastery. The one they swore never to use again. Lucia's eyes widened. "You said it would kill you." Vivian nodded. "It still might." The relic began to glow. Not with light, but with memory. The faces in the gate paused. It recognized the artifact. Rhea read aloud from Vivian's journal, her voice quivering. "By name unspoken, by path unwalked, by light uncast." The gate began to shake. The floor split open, revealing a glimpse into the other side, a chasm of colorless chaos, spinning endlessly like a wounded star. James aimed his rifle and fired a shot into the abyss. Nothing, but the faces began to scream louder. The shape in the gate lunged forward, toward Vivian. Lucia didn't think. She moved. She threw herself in front of Vivian, just as the entity lashed out. It struck her chest. Lucia screamed, thrown back into the stone wall. Her body crumpled. Blood seeped through her jacket. "Lucia!" Rhea ran to her. Vivian didn't stop the ritual. Her voice rose with every word, her body shaking violently. The relic burned white-hot. Salt burst into flame. The runes flared and exploded in light. Then, silence, real silence. The gate collapsed, and the thing inside was gone. Lucia was barely breathing. James pressed his hands to her wound. "Stay with me. Stay with me." She opened her eyes. Just a little. "I saw it," she whispered. What's waiting? James leaned close. What did you see? She gave a bloody smile. Nothing, and everything. And then she passed out. The cold wouldn't leave. Even after the gate collapsed and the relic dimmed, the crypt felt like winter sealed in stone. Vivian stood motionless in the scorched circle, hands still trembling. The others surrounded Lucia, who lay on a blanket of blood, barely breathing. James kept pressing his hands on her chest, whispering, "Stay with me." "Please, she needs help now," Rhea said, scanning Lucia's body. 2 ribs broken, maybe lung damage. If we don't get her to the surface. "There is no surface," Eric muttered. They all turned. He stood near the back wall, flashlight pointed at what used to be the staircase they had descended. It was gone. Only smooth stone remained. No door, no exit, no way back. "What the hell is this?" James shouted, rising to his feet. "It was right here. I carved a mark. Look." He searched frantically, hands sweeping across the wall. Nothing. Even his cut mark on the bricks had vanished, like it never existed. "We're trapped," Eric said, his voice dry. Vivian closed her eyes. "No, not trapped. Shifted." "Shifted?" Rhea asked. "This isn't the same cathedral anymore." "Not entirely. The ritual, it bent space, folded it like paper." "You mean we're in another dimension?" "Half in, half out." Silence. Then James whispered, "Then Lucia's wound might be real in both." Eric slammed his fist against the wall. "We can't sit here waiting for death." "Then we don't," Rhea said. "We go deeper. We find a new way out." James hesitated, but nodded. "I'll carry her." He lifted Lucia into his arms, and they pressed forward, deeper into the labyrinth of stone. The corridor narrowed, then widened into a vast chamber. It wasn't on any map. The walls were covered in bones, not stacked neatly, but grown into the stone like roots. Skulls stared out with hollow eyes. Some were animal, some weren't, Rhea muttered. "This isn't architecture. It's feeding." At the center of the room, something glowed, a shallow pool, perfectly round, filled with a liquid blacker than ink. Vivian approached first. "It's not water," she said. "What is it?" "Memory." She knelt and touched the surface. A ripple burst across the pool. And suddenly, her eyes went white. She gasped and collapsed. James rushed to her side. "Vivian!" She blinked rapidly, trying to breathe. "I saw it. I saw before." "Before what?" She looked up at him. "Before this place was sealed. Before the gate. Before the monastery. Before all of it. This thing we're facing. It's not just ancient. It's older than memory itself." Eric looked into the pool. "Maybe it can show us a way out." Rhea frowned. "Or maybe it shows you what it wants you to see." But James nodded. "We have no choice." One by one they touched the pool. Each one collapsed and saw Vivian's vision. Monks screaming, burning temples, the relic falling from the sky like a comet. Eric, soldiers in gas masks digging through black sand. One opens a sealed jar. He vanishes. Rhea, a quiet room. Her brother's voice calling her name, except he died 5 years ago. James, the night Lucia was shot. But this time, he fails to save her. The pool didn't lie. It showed truth twisted by regret. They woke in silence, except for one voice. "Lucia," she was whispering. James leaned in. Her lips moved slowly. "It's coming back." "What is?" Her eyes opened, still half glazed. "The thing from the gate. It's not dead." James froze. "The ritual banished it," Vivian said, "not destroyed it. If it finds another opening..." Rhea turned around sharply. "Then we cannot stay here." The ground rumbled faintly beneath them, as if something was waking. They moved quickly, the echoes of their steps swallowed by the dense silence around them. Every few minutes, James glanced at Lucia in his arms. Her breathing was shallow, her face pale, but her lips kept moving, murmuring unintelligible fragments. "She's delirious," Rhea whispered. "Her mind's caught between here and wherever that thing is." "No," Vivian said softly, walking ahead. She's still connected. Whatever touched her through the gate hasn't let go. They turned a corner and found a door, wooden, black, etched with deep, spiraling symbols that seemed to pulse when looked at too long. Eric approached it first, his torchlight flickering as he reached for the handle. "Wait," Vivian said. "This isn't just a door, it's a choice." Eric paused. "Explain." "It's not about getting out. It's about what you're willing to leave behind." They stood in silence. Then James said, "We're out of time." He pushed the door open. Behind it was a hallway of mirrors. Dozens, hundreds. Each mirror reflecting not their current selves, but versions of them. Older, younger, broken, dead. Ria's hand trembled. "What the hell is this?" Vivian stepped forward, her own reflection flickering between childhood and old age. "It's trying to confuse us. Mirrors aren't just glass. They remember." James's reflection showed him cradling Lucia, but in each one, she was either already dead, or worse, twisting into something inhuman. "Keep walking," Eric muttered, gripping his knife. Eyes forward. The mirrors began whispering. At first it was just wind, then names, then voices. "James." He froze. It was Lucia's voice. From one of the mirrors, she looked at him, not unconscious, but smiling. "I'm safe here," she said. "No," he whispered, shaking his head. "You're hurt. You're bleeding." "I don't hurt here," she said again. "Put me down. Join me." He almost did. He almost let go. But then the real Lucia stirred in his arms. Just enough. "Don't." Barely a breath, but enough to break the spell. He stepped away from the mirror. The reflection vanished. Vivian grabbed Ria's arm. "Don't stop, no matter what you see." The mirrors twisted again, now showing creatures behind them. Flickers of clawed hands, burning eyes, bone wings. They didn't move, but it felt like they were waiting. Then, one by one, the mirrors cracked. Hairline fractures at first, then full spiderwebs of broken glass. Something was coming through. "Run!" Eric shouted. They bolted. As they did, the glass exploded behind them, shards slicing the air as shadows burst into the corridor. They didn't look back, didn't stop. They stumbled into another chamber, a spiral room with no ceiling, stars spinning above like a vortex. In the center, a stone obelisk with a symbol carved deep into its face. Vivian collapsed beside it. "This is the anchor. This holds the cathedral in place. Without it, the whole thing will fold." "Then break it," Eric said, raising his blade. "No!" she shouted. "If we destroy it now, we're lost too." James laid Lucia down gently. "Then what do we do?" Vivian looked at them all. "One of us has to stay, to finish the seal." Everyone went silent. Then James said quietly, "I'll do it." Raya stepped forward. "No, you still have her. She won't make it if this thing finds a way back. I need to make sure it stays sealed." He turned to Vivian. "Tell me what to do." She handed him the relic. The ancient, blackened symbol glowed faintly in his hand. "Stand in the circle. Recite these words. Don't stop, no matter what happens." James nodded. He stepped into the center. The floor began to hum beneath his feet. Lucia whispered again, "James." He smiled at her. "One last time. I'll find you, wherever this ends." The others turned and ran. Behind them, the light surged. A scream tore through the dark, not of pain, but rage. And the gate began to close again. They didn't stop running until the corridor behind them collapsed, sealing James and whatever force he was holding back. Behind tons of crumbling stone, silence fell. Lucia stirred in Ria's arms, her eyes fluttering open. "Where?" "You're safe," Raya whispered. "He stayed behind for you." Lucia's eyes widened. "James!" "No!" But Vivian grabbed her shoulder. "He knew what he was doing. We can't go back. If the seal breaks again, none of us survive." They moved on, deeper into the ancient cathedral. The walls here were smoother, darker, almost alive. They passed symbols they hadn't seen before, marks that shifted when not directly observed, as if they twisted behind their backs. Vivienne stopped at a large archway inscribed with crescent shapes. We're close to the heart. If James succeeded, the source will be vulnerable. Rhea looked behind them. You said the cathedral moves. Is it watching us now? Vivienne nodded. Always. Lucia touched the wall and immediately recoiled. Her fingers burnt. I saw something, she whispered. A face, in the stone. A guardian, Vivienne said. Or what's left of one. They entered a round chamber. It was quiet. Too quiet. In the center was a throne, black as coal, pulsing faintly. No one sat in it, yet the air bent around it like something invisible was crouched there, waiting. We're not alone, Eric muttered. Vivienne nodded. It's hiding, but it feels us. She took out the last relic, a jagged obsidian shard thrumming in her hand. With this, I can sever the last tether between its world and ours. But I'll need time. How long? Rhea asked. Vivienne looked grim. Until it notices. Suddenly, the walls groaned. A crack split across the floor. The air turned cold. Then came the voice. Low, rumbling, like thunder beneath the earth. You bring the blade here. You think it can cut eternity? Everyone froze. The air shimmered near the throne. Then ripped, like silk torn open. From it crawled a figure. Not entirely solid, not entirely shadow. Its limbs were too long, its face constantly shifting between human and monstrous. It had no eyes, yet it saw all. Eric stepped forward. We've fought your kind before. You've fought pieces, the thing replied. I am the root. It surged forward. Lucia screamed. Eric swung his blade, striking the figure's arm. The creature screeched, but the wound sealed instantly. Rhea fired 2 flares. The light pierced it, making it stagger back. Vivienne knelt at the edge of the room, drawing symbols into the floor with the obsidian shard. The creature turned to her. The witch. It moved fast, too fast, but Lucia stepped in its path, her eyes glowing faintly now. No, she raised her hand. A burst of searing energy flared from her palm. Not hers, but something channeled through her. The creature recoiled. Vivienne's voice grew louder, chanting in a tongue none of them understood. The symbols on the floor glowed white. The room shook. The throne cracked. No, the creature howled. Eric tackled it, pushing it back toward the gate of light opening behind the throne. You belong to the dark, he shouted. The creature clawed him, tore his shoulder, but he held on. Vivienne's final word was a scream. The light exploded, and the gate sucked the creature inside, its scream swallowed by eternity. Then silence. Eric collapsed. Lucia rushed to him, sobbing. No, please. But Eric was breathing. Barely. Vivienne fell beside them, exhausted. It's done, she whispered. It's over. But Lucia looked at the broken throne and the symbols still burning in the stone. No, she said quietly. Not yet. Hours passed. The silence was no longer threatening, but heavy, like a breath held too long. They'd bandaged Eric as best they could. He was conscious, but weak, his right arm hanging limp. Lucia hadn't spoken since the gate closed. Vivienne sat by the cracked throne, staring at the glowing runes. They're not fading, she said. Isn't that good? Rhea asked. Vivienne shook her head. No, it means the source is still active. Something is still alive down here. Eric coughed. I thought we sent it back. We did, Vivienne said. But it left something behind. Lucia finally spoke. Her voice was strange, calmer, older. I saw it, inside the light. Everyone turned to her. It was falling, screaming, but part of it broke away, like a shadow left behind. It didn't go with the rest. She stood, walking toward the throne. I can feel it. Hiding, waiting. Vivienne frowned. You shouldn't. I have to, Lucia said. She touched the cracked stone and it pulsed. Dim, but alive. Suddenly, she gasped. Rhea grabbed her. What is it? Lucia turned, tears in her eyes. It's calling to me. Vivienne stood quickly. We need to leave. Now. But what about the source? Eric asked. We can't destroy it. Not yet. It's tied to her now. Lucia shook her head. No, I'm tied to it. She held her palm up. There was a symbol glowing just beneath her skin. One of the runes from the floor. I think it marked me. Or I marked it. I don't know. Vivienne looked pale. That's a bond, a living link. If we break it wrong, it'll kill you. Then we do it right, Lucia said. They left the chamber behind, retracing their steps through the warped halls. The cathedral felt different, heavier, angrier. Shadows twisted unnaturally. The walls breathed. Vivienne muttered protective chants under her breath. But something was following them. Lucia could feel it. When they reached the great corridor lined with empty statues, they found one had moved. It now pointed toward Lucia. Eric raised his weapon. Move, now! But it was too late. The statue's hand opened, and from its palm spilled black ash. The ash took shape, floating, coiling into a figure identical to Lucia, except its eyes were pure white. The mimic opened its mouth, but no sound came. Lucia stared at it. I know you, she whispered. You're the shadow. The mimic blinked and then rushed her. Vivienne shouted a word, sending blue light between them. The mimic hit the barrier and shrieked. A high, static noise that made Rhea and Eric stagger. Lucia raised her hand. The rune under her skin burned. The mimic stopped, twitching, then mimicked the motion. Vivienne hissed, It's linked to you. Everything you do, it learns. Then I'll show it something it can't handle, Lucia said. She stepped forward. The mimic tilted its head. Lucia closed her eyes and whispered something only she could hear. Then she opened them, and they weren't her eyes anymore. They were bright, ancient, burning with a light from beyond this world. The mimic screamed, not in rage, but in fear. Lucia stepped through the ward, hand glowing. She touched its chest. For a moment, nothing. Then, the mimic collapsed into ash. Gone. Lucia fell to her knees, shaking. Vivienne caught her. Are you okay? Lucia nodded slowly. It's gone, but... She looked up, terrified. I think more are coming. They didn't stop moving. The mimic was gone, but its presence lingered like smoke in the lungs, sickening and clinging. We need higher ground, Vivienne said. Eric nodded, gritting his teeth against the pain. Stairs up, northwest corner. The group moved through the vast nave, past pillars that now seemed twisted, almost watching them. The light of their torches flickered unnaturally. Stretching too far, bending in places light should not bend. Lucia stayed close to Vivienne, one hand pressed against her chest. Is the rune still active? Rhea asked. Lucia nodded. It's pulsing, stronger now. Vivienne gave her a look. That means something's drawn to you, probably more shadows. They picked up the pace. As they neared the northwest stairs, the ground began to tremble. At first, it was subtle, like distant thunder. Then came the scream, a high, guttural howl from beneath the stone floor, as if the earth itself were in pain. Eric stumbled, catching himself against a broken pew. Not again. Cracks split the marble. Dust rained from the ceiling. And then, through the hallway behind them, they came. Figures, not quite human, not quite beast. Twisted things, with skin that looked stretched too tight and mouths filled with teeth that didn't fit. One of them shrieked. Rhea opened fire. Bullets tore through the air, but some of the creatures didn't fall. They kept coming. Run, Vivienne shouted. They charged up the stairs, Eric leaning on the wall, Rhea covering the rear. Lucia hesitated. Just a second. And in that second, one of the creatures reached her. It grabbed her arm. The rune on her chest flared, and the creature screamed, a sound like metal tearing inside your skull. It burned, turning to ash in front of her. Lucia staggered back, stunned. It couldn't touch me. Vivienne pulled her up the stairs. Good, but don't count on that saving you every time. They burst into a long corridor, lit by the faint glow of decayed chandeliers. Mosaics on the walls had been vandalized, scratched out, burned, and at the far end, a door. Steel. unmarked. Raya reached it first. Locked. Vivian touched it, and the metal shimmered. Then clicked. She pushed it open. The room beyond was circular, with shelves built into the walls like a library. But the books were wrong. They weren't made of paper or parchment. They pulsed. Some were warm to the touch. One was bleeding. Lucia looked sick. Vivienne moved carefully, scanning the shelves. This is a vault, an arcane archive. Forbidden knowledge. Can we find a way out? Eric asked. Maybe. But more importantly, we can learn what it wants. She picked up one of the books, an oily black volume with no title. It opened without her touching it. Pages flipped, then stopped. The page showed a drawing. A cathedral. This cathedral, surrounded by roots. Underneath something massive, trapped, sealed. Vivienne whispered. It wasn't a god. It was a prisoner. A prison built around it, Lucia asked. Vivienne nodded. The rituals, the runes, the mimic. It's all containment. We disturbed it, broke the seals. And now it's waking up, Eric muttered. A noise came from the hallway. They turned. The creatures were coming again, but slower this time. Cautious, Lucia held the black book. I think I can stop them, if I read it. Don't, Vivienne snapped. Those books aren't safe. I know, Lucia said, opening it. But I have to try. Lucia's voice trembled as she began to read from the black book. The language was not one she knew, but her mouth moved anyway, as if something inside her had learned it long ago. The words came like oil sliding over fire, slick and burning. The air in the room thickened. The walls hummed. The creatures at the end of the hall screamed and recoiled, clawing at their heads. One dropped to its knees, vomiting black bile before collapsing. Vivienne stood frozen, watching the book's pages flick on their own. She's channeling it. Raya raised her gun. If it turns her into something, I shoot. No, Eric said firmly. Not yet. Lucia's eyes rolled white. The final syllable left her lips. A blast of sound, not heard, but felt, rushed through the chamber. Every candle snuffed out. The walls cracked. Time seemed to slow, and the hallway was empty. The creatures were gone. Lucia collapsed. Vivienne ran to her, catching her head before it hit the ground. Lucia's eyes fluttered open. I saw it. Saw what? Vivienne asked, tense. The thing buried here. The prisoner. She was shaking. It's awake now. It knows who we are. Vivienne looked to the book. It had closed itself. Smoke leaked from its seams. We need to leave, Rhea said. That thing, it's coming, right? No, Lucia whispered. It's not coming. She turned slowly to face them. It's already here. The room began to change. The air grew heavy, suffocating. The walls bled dark liquid between the stones. The chandeliers above twisted like writhing limbs. And in the center of the room, the stone cracked. A circular slab, once part of the floor, began to rise slowly. Something beneath it breathed. Eric limped toward the entrance, but the steel door slammed shut with a deafening clang. They were locked in. Rhea raised her rifle again. What the hell is this? Vivienne moved toward the slab. It's the core of the prison, the final seal. From the edges of the room, shadows crept forward, humanoid shapes with glowing eyes, whispering words in broken tongues. They did not attack. They watched. A low voice echoed from beneath the rising slab. You should not have come. It was not one voice. It was hundreds, screaming, whispering, chanting in unison. Lucia clutched her head, eyes wide with pain. It's speaking to me. What's it saying? Eric asked, back against the wall. That it's hungry. The slab rose fully now, revealing a staircase spiraling downward into a void of absolute black. From below came wind, icy, carrying voices, memories, regrets, and something else. Vivienne took a step forward. If we leave it here, it'll get out. The seals are broken. We can't fight that, Rhea snapped. No, Vivienne agreed. But we can finish what the last guardian started. She looked at the book still clutched in Lucia's hand. There's one more spell, one final rite. We take it down there. We end it. Lucia nodded. And then the team, bloodied and scared, descended into the dark. The staircase descended into the earth like a spiral carved by ancient claws. No torches, no light. Only the glow of Lucia's book, now pulsing with a pale green hue that seemed alive. The deeper they went, the colder it became. I can't feel my fingers, Eric muttered, teeth chattering. Vivienne touched the wall. Frost. It's not just cold, it's draining us. Lucia's voice was hoarse. It feeds on hope, on warmth. That's why it was imprisoned so far below. No light, no thoughts, nothing to hold on to. Suddenly, the air grew still. They had reached the bottom. The chamber opened before them. A vast cavern of black stone veined with glowing red cracks. In its center, a pit yawned wide, circular, lined with runes and bones. And from that pit rose a shape. It wasn't a body, nor a beast, nor anything they could name. Shifting shadow and bone and fire, faces melting into one another, screaming without mouths. Vivienne's breath caught. That's it, Lucia said. The hunger, it didn't attack. Not yet. Instead, the walls trembled with its voice. You broke the seals. Vivienne stood forward. They were already broken. We just followed the signs. You came with fire, with blood, with fear. As they always do. Lucia opened the book. Its pages turned rapidly on their own. I know what to do, she whispered. But it needs a sacrifice. What kind? Rhea asked. Lucia looked up. A soul, one touched by the void, one it recognizes. They all turned slowly, toward Eric. His face went pale. Why me? Vivienne remembered. The nightmare, the voice that haunted him first, the way the creatures never attacked him. You were chosen before we arrived, Lucia said. The hunger began to descend into the pit, coiling like smoke. Your offering will not stop me, it hissed. It won't stop you, Lucia agreed. But it will trap you again. Vivienne stepped beside Eric. You don't have to. I do, he interrupted. I felt it the moment we entered this place, like I was always meant to end here. He turned to Lucia. What do I do? Lucia gave him the book. Read, speak its true name, then jump. Rhea looked away. Vivienne placed a hand on his shoulder. Thank you. Eric nodded. Then, with the last of his strength, he opened the book. His voice rang out, deep, resonant, older than language. The hunger screamed. The pit blazed red. The air roared. Eric spoke the final name, and he jumped. Time froze. Light exploded from the pit, consuming the shadow creature, the runes igniting one by one. The cavern cracked. Lucia screamed, We have to go, now! They ran. Up the stairs, through the twisting cold, as behind them the earth shook and the very stone groaned in pain. They burst into the upper chambers just as the black stone doorway collapsed behind them, sealing the path forever. Only silence remained. Outside, the storm had passed. The sky was gray but calm. Lucia closed the book. Its glow faded. Vivienne looked to the sky. Did it work? Lucia nodded. The seal is whole again. It won't rise for 1,000 years. They stood together in the ruins, wounded, fewer than before, but alive. 3 days had passed since Eric's sacrifice. The survivors, Vivienne, Lucia, and Rhea, had made it back to the nearest outpost with the help of a search team who picked up the distress signal Lucia had triggered just before the collapse. None of them spoke much. They were alive, yes, but a part of them had been left behind, sealed beneath the earth with the ancient terror, and yet the world above seemed unchanged. Vivienne stared at the rising sun from the outpost window, its golden hue soft on the snow. She hadn't seen daylight properly in days. Lucia joined her, a mug of bitter coffee in hand. I haven't slept since we got out, she said quietly. Same, Vivienne replied. They stood in silence for a while. Then Lucia added, Do you think he's gone forever? Vivienne hesitated. I think he gave himself to stop something older than time. And I think if we ever forget him, that's when he'll truly be gone." Lucia nodded, eyes glistening. Later that evening, an official from the European Historical Society arrived at the outpost. A man in his late 50s with silver hair and a hard gaze. He introduced himself as Dr. Raoul Berengar, sent to debrief the team and review their findings. Raya greeted him at the door. "We already gave our statements." "Official statements," Berengar said. "But what I want is the truth." He sat across from them, unfolding a leather-bound notebook. "Let's start with what you found." Lucia hesitated, then opened her satchel. Inside was the ancient book, Eric's book. Its surface had dulled. It no longer glowed. But Berengar's eyes lit up. "You brought it?" Vivienne narrowed her gaze. "Why does that interest you so much?" Berengar leaned forward. "Because that book is one of 7, and if you opened one, the others might be waking too." Rhea stiffened. "You're saying this isn't over?" "No," Berengar said flatly. "It never was." He turned to a new page and slid it across the table. An illustration. A crumbling tower on a cliff, beneath a moon with 3 rings. "France," he said. "The next signal came from here. 3 days ago." Vivienne's jaw tightened. "Another breach?" Berengar nodded. Lucia held the book tighter. "If we go, someone else might not come back." Berengar didn't argue. He only said, "You're the only ones who faced one and survived." Silence again. Then Vivienne stood. "We leave tomorrow." Rhea looked at her, then at Lucia. Both nodded. Outside, the wind howled against the glass. The nightmare wasn't over. It had only just begun. The train to Normandy cut through the quiet French countryside, steam rising in the cold morning air. The landscape outside blurred past the windows. Fields, rivers, forgotten towns. Vivienne sat in silence, clutching her coat tighter. Her mind was back in the cavern, in the pit, in the final moments of Eric's sacrifice. Lucia sat across from her, thumbing through Eric's book. Still no glow. Still no answers. Raya leaned near the window, sketching. A crooked tower, a broken moon, a shadow watching from beneath the earth. "We shouldn't be going back," Rhea muttered without looking up. "We never left," Vivienne replied. They arrived in Normandy by evening, greeted not by soldiers or officials, but by fog. Thick and unmoving. The village of La Roche-Noire was little more than old stone houses and a chapel that hadn't rung its bell in years. Berengar met them at the station, coat soaked, eyes colder than before. "The signal came from the cliffs to the north," he said without preamble. "Locals report dreams, strange voices. A few animals have gone missing. A child wandered into the fog and never returned." "Any idea what's there?" Lucia asked. Berengar hesitated. "An abandoned lighthouse, closed since 1911. It was never on any official maritime registry." Vivienne frowned. "Then why was it built?" "Some say it wasn't built to guide ships," Berengar said grimly, "but to keep something in." They set out at dawn, climbing through twisted paths and frozen mud. The fog thickened with every step. The sound of the sea, too far away to see, echoed like a heartbeat. The lighthouse revealed itself as a black silhouette at the edge of the cliffs. Its stone was wet with moss and age. Windows shattered. Door ajar. Raya whispered, "This place shouldn't exist." Vivienne stepped forward. "Neither should what we saw beneath the monastery." But it did. They entered. Inside was silence. Dust choked the air. Walls were carved with symbols, some familiar from Eric's book, others completely alien. Lucia ran her fingers along a symbol glowing faintly. "It's active." Vivienne lit a lantern. "We go together, no splitting up." They moved deeper into the lighthouse, spiraling up rotten stairs. Each level brought new markings. Some floors had collapsed entirely, others were cold with something more than weather. At the top, they reached a chamber lined with glass shards. In its center stood a rusted iron mirror, nearly 2 meters tall, framed with bones. And behind the mirror, something moved. Vivienne raised her lantern. The surface of the mirror rippled. Not glass, not metal, but something else. It shimmered like oil and ash, and then a face emerged. Eric's face. But wrong. The eyes were empty voids. The mouth stretched too wide. The voice came not from his lips, but from the air. "You let me fall," Rhea gasped. Lucia stepped forward, shaking. "No," she said. "You're not him." The thing behind the mirror laughed. "But I remember you. I remember your screams, your fear, your warmth, and I am hungry," Vivienne whispered. "It's feeding off memory," Lucia nodded. "It's not just a portal. It's a mirror to pain, and it's open." The mirror cracked slightly, and a hand began to emerge. Black, bone-thin, clawed. Rhea aimed her gun. "Tell me when." Vivienne narrowed her eyes. "Now." The shot rang out. Glass exploded. The hand recoiled with a screech, retreating into the void. The mirror shattered entirely, spraying the room with shards and shrieks. The fog outside wailed. The lighthouse trembled. Lucia dropped to her knees, holding the book. It glowed. For the first time in days, Vivienne helped her up. "What does it say?" Lucia's eyes widened. "There are more mirrors, 6 of them, 1 for each gate. And we've only seen 2, Vivienne said grimly. Rhea exhaled. "We've got a long road ahead," Vivienne nodded. "But we're not alone. Outside, the fog began to lift. Slightly, but the war had just begun. They left the lighthouse just as the sun began to pierce the sky, golden rays slicing through the mist like blades. The air was sharp, the silence unnatural. No birds, no wind, only the sound of boots crunching frost. Vivienne walked ahead, her jaw tight, Eric's face still haunting her thoughts. It hadn't been him, she knew that. But the thing behind the mirror had known too much. It had spoken with his voice, worn his eyes. It remembered the fear. Behind her, Lucia walked in silence, clutching the book tighter than ever. The glow had faded again, leaving the cover dull and cold. The pages no longer whispered. Berengar trailed behind, murmuring prayers in Latin, holding something in his fist. A talisman or a bone. Perhaps both. They didn't speak until they reached the village again. Rhea broke the silence first. "That wasn't a gate," Lucia nodded. "No, it was a sentinel, a watcher. And we woke it." Vivienne turned. "How long do we have?" Lucia looked up slowly. "Until the others notice the mirror is gone." Inside the chapel, they gathered around the altar. It had been unused for decades, dust heavy as ash. Berengar spread Eric's notes across the stone slab, his fingers tracing the sketches. The 6 mirrors aren't gates themselves. They are lenses, windows that amplify the gates. Each mirror strengthens a specific location, a gate that is dormant or sealed. Vivienne frowned. "So what happens if all 6 are active?" Berengar looked up, his voice heavy. "Then none of the gates will stay closed?" "Not for long." Rhea scowled. "Then we break the mirrors." "No," Lucia said quickly. "We can't break them. When we shattered the one in the lighthouse, it screamed. It knew. That scream may have echoed farther than we intended." Vivienne closed her eyes. "We need to find the next mirror before they do." The map pointed east, to a forest in the Czech Republic. No name, just a red dot and the word Navrat. Lucia translated. "It means return." Berengar shuddered. "They say no path in that forest stays the same, that travelers walk for hours and find themselves where they began." Rhea smirked. "Sounds cozy," Vivienne sighed. "Pack light. We leave at first light." 3 days later, they entered the forest. The wind stopped at the edge. The trees were tall, impossibly old. Their trunks twisted like writhing bodies, and moss covered every surface like a shroud. The path they followed was barely visible, covered in dead leaves. Berengar whispered, "Don't speak too loud. The trees remember." Vivienne took the lead again, compass in hand. It spun uselessly. Lucia clutched the book. It hummed slightly. The mirror is near. Rhea looked behind them. I thought we passed that rock already. They had. The forest bent time. Minutes stretched. Hours vanished. Once, they saw a shadow moving among the branches. Another time, a child's laughter echoed from the fog. But no child came. Lucia found runes carved into a tree. The bark bled. "We're being hunted," she whispered. Vivienne drew her blade. "Then let it come." That night, they made camp in a clearing surrounded by standing stones. They took turns keeping watch, but as dawn approached, they realized the sky never changed. It remained in twilight, and in the middle of the night, Rhea vanished. Vivienne awoke first. She knew something was wrong before she even opened her eyes. The forest was silent again. Too silent. No wind. No breath of life. And one less presence in the clearing. She sat up fast. "Rhea!" No answer. Lucia stirred beside her, her eyes already wide with dread. She was on watch. Berengar rose next, clutching his satchel. "I told her not to wander from the circle. The stones were supposed to protect us." Vivienne stood. "We're splitting up. I'll head west. Lucia, east. Berengar, stay here in case she returns. If you hear anything strange, don't follow." Lucia nodded, fingers trembling as she gripped the book again. The faint humming had returned, a low, mournful vibration. Vivienne moved into the trees, blade in hand. It didn't take long before the forest shifted again. Paths curved back on themselves. Landmarks vanished. Even the light changed, filtering through the canopy in unnatural colors. She found signs. A boot print in soft moss. A torn piece of cloth. Rhea's scarf snagged on a thorn. Then came the sound. A voice. Familiar. Vivienne. It wasn't Rhea's voice. It was Eric's. Her blood turned cold. She didn't stop. Couldn't. She pressed on, deeper into the woods until she saw a figure, half hidden by the trees, standing unnaturally still. She raised her sword. "Show yourself." The figure tilted its head, impossibly slow. "You left me," it said in Eric's voice. Vivienne's grip tightened. "You're not him." "No," it replied, "but you carry his guilt. It stinks." The thing stepped forward. Its face was wrong, as if someone had worn Eric's skin like a mask, slightly stretched and cracking at the corners. Its eyes gleamed silver. Behind it, the trees seemed to lean closer. Then it moved, fast. Vivienne slashed, steel ringing through the stillness. The thing screamed, backing away, smoke rising from the wound. It vanished in seconds, melting into the fog. Where it stood, a faint trail of blood led deeper into the woods. She hesitated, then followed. Meanwhile, Lucia wandered east, her fingers pressed the pages of the book. Words bled through the parchment like ink seeping from a wound. They guided her, twisting script that only she could read. She whispered them aloud, and the trees shifted to let her pass. Then she found Rhea, or what was left of her. Her body was suspended between two trees, eyes wide, mouth torn open in a silent scream. Symbols were carved into her skin. Not human symbols, not anything known. Lucia fell to her knees, tears streaming. "I'm sorry. I should have protected you." Then Rhea blinked. Lucia gasped, but it wasn't her. Not anymore. Rhea's mouth moved and a voice spilled out. A chorus of whispers, not meant for human ears. Lucia staggered back, raising the book like a shield. The words on the pages began to glow. The forest responded. The trees screamed. At the same time, Berengar remained in the clearing, muttering his prayers. But he felt it too. The air growing colder. The stones began to crack, fine lines spreading across their surface. One of them split in half with a deafening snap. Berengar rose, eyes wide. Far in the trees, something was coming. Berengar stood frozen, heart pounding. The shattered stones that had once protected them now lay in fragments around him. Whatever force had broken the wards was not human, and it was coming. He reached into his satchel, pulling out a small vial of black powder and a string of bone charms. With trembling fingers, he drew a circle in the dirt and poured the powder around its edges. Then he lit it. The powder burst into cold blue flame, and a faint wall of shimmering light encircled him. Not much, but enough to buy time. From the trees, a shape emerged. Not walking, but slithering. It had no clear body, just an undulating shadow like smoke and hunger bound into form. Eyes gleamed within the void. Not one pair. Dozens. Old blood, it hissed. So close. So warm. Berengar threw a charm toward it. The bones clattered on the ground and began to hum. The thing stopped, twitched, then split apart, reforming into a humanoid figure cloaked in black, with a face made of flickering teeth and shifting eyes. "You cannot stop what has already begun," it whispered. Berengar didn't answer. He began chanting, old Latin words, guttural and sharp. The creature screeched and surged forward. The blue flame flared, pushing it back, but the shield was failing. Cracks appeared in the air itself. Reality buckled. Then a scream tore through the woods. Lucia. Vivienne reached the source of the scream first. The trees were still writhing as if alive, and in their center lay Lucia. Her body glowing with a strange light, the book hovering inches above her chest. The air was thick with the smell of blood and burning parchment. Vivienne knelt beside her. "Lucia, stay with me." Lucia opened her eyes. "Ria, she's not gone. Something used her. It's using all of them." Vivienne's voice trembled. "What do you mean, all?" "The lost ones. Eric, Theo, the others. They're pieces now. Pieces for something bigger. Something ancient. We're inside it." Before Vivienne could answer, the book flashed, and Lucia cried out, clutching her head. Symbols flew from the pages, etching into the ground like living flame. Then silence. Lucia passed out. Vivienne grabbed the book, shoving it into her bag, and carried Lucia back toward the clearing. Berengar had nearly collapsed when they returned. The protective circle had faded. The creature was gone, but not defeated, only retreating. Vivienne laid Lucia down. She's alive, but the book, it's doing something to her. Berengar looked at Lucia, then at the forest around them, still humming with residual energy. The seal's broken. The tomb, the entity, it's waking. Vivienne stood. "Then we have to put it back to sleep. Or kill it." Berengar shook his head. "You don't kill gods. You bind them." Vivienne met his gaze. "Then show me how." Berengar led Vivienne into the deep shadows of the forest, where even moonlight dared not follow. Lucia remained unconscious in the clearing, resting beneath a thin blanket with protective symbols drawn in salt around her. They had no time to lose. "This place," Berengar said, voice low, "was not always cursed. Once it was a sanctuary, a gate. The book you carry, it belonged to the ones who built that gate. They called themselves the Hands of Binding." Vivienne gripped the satchel. "What did they bind?" Berengar looked at her with a mixture of fear and reverence. "A god that should not have existed, a being without shape, born from the thoughts people are too afraid to think. It feeds on death, fear, regret, and now it wants out." He nodded. "And it's using the dead to open the gate again." Vivienne's voice was firm. "Then we seal it, no matter the cost." They reached a stone arch hidden beneath centuries of moss and root. It pulsed faintly in the dark, as if breathing. Symbols, the same ones from the book, lined the arch in uneven spirals. Berengar knelt and unpacked a series of relics, bones, feathers, carved stones, and a vial of silver liquid. "We'll need 3 things," he said. "Blood, memory, and will." Vivienne frowned. "Blood, I understand. But memory?" He pointed to the arch. "Each time someone dies here, the forest keeps a piece of them. Their regrets, their final thoughts. That's how the entity grows. We'll need to reverse that. Give it our memories instead. Confuse it. And will?" You'll know when the moment comes. The forest will test you." They began the ritual. Vivienne cut her palm and let her blood drip into the bowl. Berengar chanted, mixing the blood with the silver liquid. The symbols began to glow. Then Vivienne placed her hand on the arch. Her mind was pulled inward, sucked through space and time, into the entity's world. It was dark, not just the absence of light, the absence of hope. Vivienne stood in a memory that was not her own. A battlefield, smoke and blood. Eric screaming, Theo torn apart. But she wasn't herself. She was them, reliving their deaths, their terror. "No," she whispered. "These are not mine." The memory shifted. Now she saw herself holding her brother's body, her mother's face, pale and still. Her own regret flooding in like poison. The entity whispered, "Stay, drown in it. You are your guilt." Vivienne trembled, then roared back, "I am more than what I've lost." She pressed her hand against the vision and shattered it. Light burst from her chest. She woke, gasping. The arch was glowing now, a portal half formed in its center, but something clawed from the other side. A grotesque hand, black as pitch, with eyes in its palm. Berengar raised the relics and began the chant again. The hand struck the arch. Cracks formed. Something was breaking through. "Vivienne, your will, now." She stepped forward, bloodied, breathing hard. "I name you," she said, voice shaking the trees. "You are regret. You are hunger. You are nothing. You have no place here." The forest groaned. The arch exploded in light. The hand retreated, shrieking as it burned, and the portal snapped shut. Berengar collapsed. Vivienne dropped to her knees beside him. "We did it," she said. He smiled weakly. "For now." Vivienne sat in silence beside Berengar, both of them illuminated by the last glow of the shattered gate. The air was eerily still, the forest holding its breath. A victory, yes, but a fragile one. Behind them, Lucia groaned. She was waking. Vivienne hurried back to her, kneeling by the circle of salt. Lucia blinked, dazed and pale, but alive. "What happened?" she whispered. "You were gone for a while," Vivienne said gently. "But you're safe now. The gate is closed." Lucia stared at her with wide eyes. "No, it's not." Vivienne stiffened. "What do you mean?" Lucia looked toward the trees, her voice hollow. "I saw what's on the other side. That wasn't the only gate." Berengar stirred. "We don't have long," he said. "The others, they'll feel the failure. The entity may retreat, but its followers won't." Vivienne rose to her feet, body aching, and helped Berengar up. "What do we do now?" He looked to the sky. "We move tonight." The trio packed quickly. The relics were sealed, the book carefully wrapped. Berengar led them through a different path, one that wound deeper into the ancient part of the forest. "This land was once sacred," he explained, "long before the church, before cities. It still remembers, and there's one place left untouched." They reached a clearing just before dawn, a circle of standing stones overgrown with vines. Each stone was etched with the same spirals from the book, only older, deeper. Lucia gasped. "This is beautiful." Vivienne walked the perimeter, hand tracing the symbols. "This place feels alive." Berengar nodded. "It's a sanctuary. If there's anywhere we can finish the ritual, it's here." But they were not alone. A howl pierced the morning fog. Then another. From the trees came shapes, hunched, ragged, humanoid. Dozens, eyes glowing faintly. Not fully dead, not fully alive. The forest's children. Vivienne stepped forward instinctively, sword drawn. Berengar threw powder in a wide arc, forming a protective line. "They've been tracking us since nightfall, Sadi," he said. "The entity speaks through them. It's angry." Lucia trembled, but raised her torch. "Let it come." The battle was brutal. The creatures surged forward, some crawling, others bounding like animals. Vivian was a storm of movement, her blade slicing through flesh and bone, but for every one that fell, two more took its place. Berengar chanted behind her, holding the circle. Symbols ignited with blue fire. The ground trembled. Lucia fought too. Not with weapons, but fire. She hurled torches, lit brush, screamed ancient words she didn't know she remembered. But they were being overwhelmed. Vivian fell to her knees, panting, wounded. Lucia was bleeding from a gash across her back. Berengar's voice was fading. Then the earth shook, not from fear, from memory. The standing stones blazed with white light. From the center of the circle, they emerged, not creatures, but echoes. Spirits of those who had died in the forest, but had not been forgotten. Eric, Theo, even Leona, their faces calm, their bodies radiant. Vivian whispered, "They're helping us?" Berengar smiled, tears in his eyes. "They remember who they are. That's stronger than fear." The spirits rushed into the horde. Blinding light searing the shadows. The forest screamed, and in minutes, it was silent again. Vivian collapsed, exhausted. Lucia crawled to her, clutching her side. "Is it over?" Berengar, bloody and shaking, stood at the edge of the stones. "For now, but we're not done." He looked back at the trees, now quiet. "We still have to find the second gate." The forest was silent now, but the silence was uneasy, like a held breath before a scream. Vivian, Lucia, and Berengar sat within the circle of ancient stones, tending to their wounds by the first light of dawn. The spirits had vanished, their presence lingering only in the warm glow etched into the stone. "We can't stay here long," Berengar said, wrapping a cloth around his bloodied arm. "This place is sacred, yes, but once the forest reclaims its balance, it may not care who we are." Lucia winced as Vivian stitched the gash across her back. "Do you know where the second gate is?" Berengar hesitated. "Not exactly, but I have an idea." He reached into his satchel and pulled out the blackened pages of the ancient book, its corners still smoldering from the fire Lucia had cast. As they studied the book, symbols began to shift, faintly, subtly, like something alive. A new page revealed itself between the others, brittle, silver-edged, and humming with energy. Berengar traced the spirals with a cautious finger. "It's responding to the ritual," he murmured. "We've awakened something." Vivian peered closer. "What is that symbol?" At the top of the page was an emblem they hadn't seen before. Two mirrored crescents, one facing up, one down, connected by a jagged line. Berengar frowned. "That is the Eye of Dusk. The ancient map calls it a convergence point, a place where veils thin and gates multiply." Lucia's voice was quiet. "Where is it?" Berengar looked grim. "Southern Spain, in the heart of the Tabernas Desert." By midday, they were on the move again. The journey took them through 3 border crossings, endless dirt roads, and finally into the burning heart of Almeria. The further they drove, the more the land changed. Green faded to ochre, and stone to dust. Civilization thinned. Time unraveled. They reached the edge of the Tabernas at twilight. A rusted sign welcomed them to nothing. Vivian stepped out first. The desert air was sharp and dry, and the wind carried no sound. Lucia shivered. "This place feels like it doesn't want us here." "It doesn't," Berengar said simply. They followed the map deeper into the wasteland. The sky darkened fast, stars bursting to life above them. No animals, no insects, only the crunch of their boots on salt and sand. At last, they found it. A ravine hidden between fractured cliffs. Symbols carved into the stone. And in the center, a narrow opening that pulsed with a deep red glow. Vivian approached first, hand on her blade. "This is it." Berengar stepped forward and dropped a stone into the opening. No sound, just darkness. Lucia whispered. "We're not alone." A figure moved at the edge of the ravine. He wore no mask, no robes, just a simple coat and pale eyes. "I wondered when you'd find it." he said calmly. Vivienne raised her sword. "Who are you?" The man smiled. "Call me Elias." Berengar stiffened. "That name? You're one of them," Elias chuckled. "One of what, exactly?" "The damned, the awakened." He took a step forward, and the sand didn't shift under his feet. "I've seen the second gate. I've walked through it, and I came back. Not because I wanted to, but because it followed me." Vivienne's eyes narrowed. "Why tell us this?" "Because I'm not your enemy," Elias said, his voice low. "Not yet." He gestured toward the glowing crack in the earth. "Something worse is waiting on the other side, and if you open that gate before you're ready, you won't survive it." Lucia's voice trembled. "Then help us." Elias tilted his head. "I can, but I want something in return." Berengar stepped between them. "What?" Elias grinned. "When this is over, I want the book." Vivienne's fingers tightened on her sword. "That's not an option." But Elias was already gone, vanished like smoke on the desert wind. Only his voice remained, echoing softly. "Then be ready to bleed." Night gripped the desert like a vice. Lucia lit the last of the flares as they descended into the ravine, the red light casting long, twitching shadows against the stone. The opening to the second gate throbbed like a wound in the earth, its crimson glow pulsing in rhythm with something deep and old. "I don't like this," Vivienne muttered, sword drawn. "That man, Elias, he didn't lie. He warned us." Berengar placed a hand on the glowing stone, eyes narrowed. "That warning may have been a test, or a dare." They stepped through. The passage behind the gate was narrow, hewn from natural stone but distorted, as if bent by heat or ancient force. The walls sweated with a dark moisture that dripped slowly onto the cracked floor. Their footsteps echoed like whispers. Suddenly, the air turned cold, freezing. Frost crept along the walls, and the crimson light dimmed to a pale violet. Lucia gasped. "Do you hear that?" It wasn't a voice. It was many voices, layered, indistinct, crying in agony and fury, like 1,000 souls screaming from just behind the veil. Vivienne hissed, "This isn't a gate. It's a tomb." Ahead, the passage opened into a chamber unlike anything they'd seen before. The walls were covered in spiraling glyphs, and in the center was a dais with an obsidian mirror. Wide, circular, and unnaturally smooth. Mist coiled along its surface like breath. Berengar stepped forward cautiously. "This is a scrying mirror, the kind used to find lost things, or summon them." Vivienne clenched her jaw. "So where's the second gate?" Lucia pointed. There, behind the mirror, was another door. Not stone, but bone, carved from what looked like rib cages and vertebrae. Berengar swallowed. "That's not a gate we can just walk through." Suddenly, the mist from the mirror pulsed and rose, forming shapes. First fog, then limbs, then faces. Familiar faces. Dozens of them. Vivienne froze. No, she saw Elias, her old commander, her mother, each twisted into versions of themselves with hollow eyes and mouths sewn shut. They stared through her, unblinking. Lucia backed away in horror. "They're inside the mirror." Berengar grabbed a vial from his coat and hurled it at the mist. It exploded in a flash of silver fire, burning away the shapes. "They were feeding on our thoughts," he said grimly. "The gate reacts to memory, emotion." Vivienne turned toward the bone door. "So what opens it?" As if in answer, the mirror cracked. From the fracture poured smoke, and within it, a figure began to form. It was tall, robed in shadow, and its face was a blur, like water refusing to settle. In one hand, it held a key. In the other, a chain. "I am the Guardian," it said. Its voice was layered, as though 3 people spoke at once. "To pass, you must give that which you fear to lose most." Lucia looked at the others. "What does that mean?" Berengar's voice was quiet. "A sacrifice." The Guardian floated above the mirror, unmoving. Vivienne stepped forward first. "I have nothing left to lose." The Guardian turned its faceless gaze toward her. Suddenly, a scream echoed through the chamber. It was her sister's voice. "Lena!" A memory Vivian had buried deep the night she died. The smell of smoke, the sound of bones breaking. "No," Vivian gasped, falling to her knees. "That's not real." The Guardian said nothing. Lucia pulled her back, her face pale. "It is real. That's the price." Berengar looked down at the key now floating above the mirror. "We don't all need to pay. Just one." Lucia stared at the key. The whispers were louder now, closer. She stepped forward. "I'll do it," she said, voice shaking. "I'll give it what it wants." Berengar grabbed her arm. "No," but it was too late. Lucia closed her eyes and opened her memories. She remembered her father's face the night he was taken, remembered the cold silence that followed. She gave the pain, the guilt, the love, all of it. The Guardian raised the chain, then vanished. The key dropped into the mist. The bone gate creaked and slowly began to open. They passed through the bone gate in silence. The passage beyond was unlike any they had seen before. Neither natural stone nor carved ruins, but a living corridor. The walls pulsed gently, like tissue under flesh, and the floor squished faintly with each step. Berengar muttered, "We're walking inside something alive." Vivienne drew her blade again. "Then let's not wake it." Lucia was pale, but resolute, her hand still clutching the chain she'd taken from the Guardian before it vanished. "It gave me this," she whispered. "It said we'll need it." The air thickened as they went deeper. They could feel it pressing against their lungs, sticky and warm like breath in a sealed tomb. Lights danced above them, tiny, flickering motes like fireflies, but dimmer and cold. Shadows moved just beyond the walls, whispering, shifting with purpose. The corridor opened into a vast chamber. In its center rose a spire of bone and black crystal, encircled by massive chained statues. Giants bowed under invisible weight, their stone eyes weeping black tar. Above them, suspended in the dark ceiling, was something monstrous. It looked like a heart the size of a house. And it was beating. Lucia took a shaky breath. "This is it. The core." Berengar approached the spire, slowly. Symbols shimmered across its surface, ancient runes twitching and flickering like they were alive. One caught his eye. "I've seen this before," he murmured. "On the seal that killed Marco." Vivienne's eyes narrowed. "Then it's not just the heart. It's the source." Suddenly, a pulse surged from the crystal. A deep hum shook the chamber, and the chained statues stirred. They were not statues. With bone-rattling groans, the giants began to rise. Vivienne didn't wait. She charged at the nearest figure, blade flashing silver. Her sword met the creature's chain. It shattered like glass. The creature roared, eyes burning like dying stars. Berengar shouted, "Don't break the chains!" But it was too late. One of the giants was free. It lunged at them with terrifying speed, arms like siege towers, mouth opening in a scream that peeled the air. Lucia ducked and threw the Guardian's chain. It coiled midair like a serpent and wrapped around the giant's face. The creature shrieked and stumbled back, blinded. Berengar pulled Vivienne away. "We can't fight them. We have to shut the heart down." The crystal spire was glowing now, and the beating heart above pulsed faster, stronger. Lucia ran to its base, the chain still glowing in her hand. "I think the chain is a key. It's tied to the Guardian's will. If we bind the heart..." Another pulse blasted from the spire, sending Berengar flying. He slammed into the wall with a cry, blood trailing from his mouth. Vivienne stood guard in front of Lucia. "Do it! I'll buy you time!" Lucia raised the chain high. It burned with cold white light. She cast it toward the spire, where it burst into dozens of glowing links, wrapping around the black crystal and pulling tight. The heart above screamed. A rupture tore across the chamber. The ceiling cracked open, light pouring in from nowhere. The giants collapsed one by one, chains breaking apart and fading into dust. Berengar coughed, struggling to stand. "It's weakening! Lucia, hold it!" She screamed as the chain burned into her palms, but she didn't let go. Vivienne watched the heart's surface begin to split. black blood gushing from unseen wounds. Then came a final thunderous beat. The heart exploded. Darkness swallowed the room. When the silence returned, the chamber was still. Lucia lay unconscious at the base of the shattered spire. The chain was gone. The runes had vanished, and the heartbeat was no more. Vivienne helped Berengar to his feet, both of them limping toward her. "She did it," Vivienne whispered. "She really did it." Berengar nodded. "But we're not done yet. The third gate is still ahead." They turned slowly, facing a newly revealed tunnel, now open where the heart had once hung. It led down, into deeper dark. The tunnel ahead was tight and winding like the throat of some ancient beast. The walls were slick with a mucus-like film, and the air grew colder, thinner, as if the earth itself were holding its breath. Vivienne held a torch fashioned from scraps of cloth and bone. Its flame flickered nervously in the gloom. Berengar walked beside her, limping. "Lucia needs rest," Vivienne nodded. Lucia was conscious again, but weak. Her hands were bandaged, scorched from the chain, her face pale with exhaustion. "I'll carry her," Vivienne said, and without waiting she lifted Lucia onto her back. The descent took hours. At times, the tunnel seemed to shift behind them, as if refusing to let them turn back. Whispers followed their every step, always just below hearing. Shapes moved within the walls, sometimes eyes, sometimes mouths, sometimes neither. Then they came upon it. The third gate. It wasn't a door, nor a passage, but a wall of blood-red mist. It churned as they approached, pulsing in time with something deep beneath the ground. The mist carried voices, not whispers, but screams. Long, endless screams. Berengar stopped. This isn't a threshold. It's a trial." Lucia stirred behind Vivienne. "We go together." They stepped into the mist. It was like walking into boiling memory. The world around them twisted. Vivienne blinked, and she was alone. She stood in a field of graves under a black sun. Wind howled with voices she knew, her fallen comrades, her brother, her mother, all calling her name. She turned. Something rose from the soil, a figure, broken and familiar. Her brother. "Why didn't you save me, Vivi?" he asked, his voice thick with betrayal. Vivienne shook her head. "You're not real." "But I died," the figure said. "And you lived." Elsewhere, Berengar stumbled through an endless library. Books screamed as he touched them, pages weeping blood. Flames crept along the shelves. He turned and saw his younger self, kneeling before a ruined altar, hands soaked in blood. "You chose knowledge over life," the younger Berengar said. "Over love, over truth." "I did what I had to," Berengar answered. "Then pay the price." Lucia stood before a burning village. Children screamed. Her hands were soaked in flame. Her parents, dead again and again, dying each time she blinked. Behind her, the Guardian stood, silent. "You seek to fix the past," it said, "but the past is ash." Lucia dropped to her knees. "I know, but I still have to try," the mist howled. Vivienne fell to her knees, eyes shut tight, whispering her brother's name until the wind broke. Berengar walked into the fire without fear, letting it consume him whole until only ash remained, and he stepped from it, reborn. Lucia held the Guardian's gaze, and in its silence found something close to peace. Then the mist vanished. They stood once more in the cavern. The air was still. The trial was over. Each of them had passed, not by fighting, but by surrendering to the truth. Before them stood a door unlike the others, made of gold-veined obsidian, etched with the shape of a serpent eating its own tail. It opened with a soft hiss. A stairway descended into darkness. Vivienne looked at the others. "No more illusions. From here on, it's real," Berengar nodded. "Then let's finish this." And they stepped down into the deep. The stairwell spiraled downward like the throat of a giant serpent. No walls enclosed it, just open blackness on either side, a void that hummed like distant thunder. Each step they took echoed forever. Vivienne led the descent, torch in hand, her face grim. Berengar followed, and Lucia, though still weak, walked on her own now, her eyes sharp with a new resolve. They walked for what felt like hours. Then came the sound. First faint, like dripping water. But as they went deeper, it grew into something unnatural. A rhythm, like breathing, but too slow, too vast, Lucia whispered. Something's awake down there, Vivienne nodded. We're not alone anymore. At last, the stairs ended. They stepped into a circular chamber carved from volcanic stone. Ancient glyphs pulsed along the walls, alive with red light. In the center stood a monolith of black glass, taller than any of them, etched with symbols that shimmered like stars. Berengar approached first. "This is it," he whispered. The source. As he reached out, the monolith pulsed, and the chamber responded. The glyphs lit up one by one, cascading like fire. The ground rumbled. From the far side of the chamber, something moved. It emerged slowly, a figure of shifting bone and smoke, eyes like pits of flame, cloaked in robes made of shadow. Vivienne raised her sword. "Is it another guardian?" "No," Berengar said, voice hollow. "It's older than them. The being spoke, though its mouth never moved. Children of clay, why do you descend?" Its voice was everywhere, inside their bones, their blood, their thoughts. Berengar answered, "We seek the truth, the curse, the source of this madness." The being tilted its head. "You stand at the heart of the world. What you call a curse is a heartbeat." Vivienne stepped forward. "People are dying, being twisted, tormented. If this is a heartbeat, it's diseased." The being's eyes flared brighter. "It is not I who corrupts. It is your kind. You dig, you break, you hunger for what lies beneath. And now you have found it." Lucia clenched her fists. "Then we stop it." The being let out a sound like laughter, cold and endless. "You cannot stop what was never meant to sleep." Suddenly, the monolith split open, cracks racing along its surface. From within, a column of black liquid rose, twisting in mid-air, forming a shape. Human, almost, but writhing with thousands of eyes. It screamed. Lucia fell to her knees, clutching her ears. Berengar staggered backward. "It's awakening, whatever it is." Vivienne threw her torch at the base of the monolith. It exploded in flame, but the entity was untouched. The shadow being raised its hand, and the fire froze in the air, still burning but unmoving. "This is the beginning of your end." Vivienne drew her sword. "Then we'll make it a damn good end," she charged. Berengar followed, chanting spells, light spilling from his fingertips. Lucia rose, screaming in fury, and hurled her own fire, drawn not from magic, but from rage. The battle was chaos. Blades clashed with smoke. Light tore at shadow. Screams and silence collided. The entity fought without form, without mercy. Vivienne leapt high, slicing through the tendrils, each strike burning with white fire. Berengar cast wards to shield them, but the darkness cracked them one by one. Lucia ran to the monolith, hands pressed against the surface, chanting words she did not know, but the stone responded. The room shook. The being shrieked. A crack split the chamber floor. Then the ceiling above them opened with a roar of stone, and daylight poured in. Something howled, retreating into the dark. The entity collapsed, melting into smoke and vanishing into the cracks. Silence. Vivienne fell to her knees, panting. Berengar leaned on his staff, bloodied. Lucia slumped to the ground, the monolith dimming behind her. They had survived, but the deeper truth still lay below. Vivienne stood slowly. That wasn't the end. Berengar nodded. Just the gatekeeper, and ahead, another stairway awaited, descending even deeper into the earth. The new staircase was older than any they'd seen, chiseled roughly into the stone, worn smooth by time, and something else. Every step felt heavier, as though the air itself resisted their descent. They descended in silence, shaken but determined. Lucia walked near the front now, her steps steady, the glow of the monolith still flickering faintly in her eyes. Whatever she had awakened or connected to, it hadn't left her, Berengar noticed. "That thing touched you, didn't it?" Lucia nodded without hesitation. "It didn't hurt me. It showed me things, glimpses, memories that weren't mine." Vivian glanced back. "What kind of memories?" Lucia hesitated. "Sacrifice. Fires. An ancient world built beneath this one. A war so old even time forgot it. And something trapped at the center. Something that never should have existed." The stairs opened into a vast cavern, far larger than anything they'd seen. A subterranean city stretched out before them, carved from obsidian and bone. Spires pierced the gloom like broken teeth, and bridges of black stone arched over rivers of glowing red mist. Statues lined every path, warped, faceless figures in twisted poses, many with arms outstretched toward the ceiling. Vivienne whispered, "This place, it's not dead." Berengar pointed to the mist. "That's not fog. That's memory, condensed thought. This city remembers everything." Lucia shivered. "It remembers screaming." They stepped cautiously into the city. Every footfall echoed off the obsidian walls like the strike of a gong. As they passed one of the statues, its head turned. Just slightly. Vivienne stopped. "Did you see?" "I saw it," Berengar said, stepping back. "They're watching." The statues began to twitch. Their stone limbs groaned as cracks spread along their surfaces. And then, as one, they moved. Not fast, not violent, just slow, precise movements as though acting out a memory. A play on repeat. Some held invisible swords, others knelt as if praying. Some pointed directly at the intruders. Lucia murmured. "They're showing us what happened." Berengar watched in awe. "No, they're reliving it." A tremor passed through the ground. The statues froze. From the far end of the plaza, a great gate began to open, slabs of stone grinding apart, revealing a throne room beyond. And on the throne sat a corpse. It wore robes of gold and bone, crowned with jagged antlers, and its hands rested on a blade of obsidian longer than a man. Though its flesh had long rotted away, its eyes still burned with ember light. Vivian drew her sword again. "Do we fight it?" But the corpse spoke first, its voice like wind through a tomb. "You are late." Lucia's heart froze. The corpse rose, impossibly tall, its limbs clicking into place like an ancient machine. It stepped forward, and the city dimmed around it. Berengar whispered, "That's the king in ash." The being raised its blade, but did not strike. Instead, it placed the tip to the stone and drew a long line. A symbol flared to life. Ancient, divine, binding. You seek the heart, the gate, the final veil. Berengar stepped forward cautiously. "Yes, we need to end it. The world above is falling." The king did not blink. "You are the third to come. The first was broken, the second consumed. You are the last." Lucia asked, voice shaking. "What must we do?" The king turned his gaze to her. "Prove you are worthy to see beyond." Suddenly, the cavern shifted. Walls fell away. The three explorers stood now in a perfect circle of stone, floating in darkness. Above and below, nothing, only stars and silence. From the void, figures emerged, shadowed versions of themselves. Dark Vivian, bleeding rage. Dark Berengar, eyes like pits of sorrow. Dark Lucia, laughing with madness. Each stepped forward, swords drawn, spells ready, flames burning. The king's voice echoed one last time. "Face what you have hidden. Conquer your reflection, or join the others who failed." Vivian clenched her jaw. "I've been waiting for this." The battle had begun. The battle in the void began with silence. No wind, no echo, only the heavy sound of boots stepping on stone, of steel sliding against leather. of breath held between heartbeats. Vivienne moved first. She charged her shadow self with a scream, blades clashing mid-air in a storm of sparks. Her doppelganger met her blow for blow, mirroring every movement with uncanny precision. Berengar summoned a wall of flame between himself and his shadow. Dark Berengar stepped through it without flinching, his body glowing with infernal heat, his mouth forming words in an ancient, dead language that twisted the air around them. Lucia stood still. Her double tilted its head, grinning with teeth too sharp to be human. "You've already felt me," it whispered in Lucia's voice, layered with dozens more. "I've always been here." Lucia reached into her satchel, pulling free the black crystal orb taken from the monolith chamber. It pulsed now, alive, aware. "I'm not afraid of you," she said quietly. The shadows attacked. Vivienne and her double danced in a deadly spiral. Slash for slash, they matched each other's fury, the only difference in their eyes. Vivienne's burned with purpose, the shadows with hatred. "You're nothing but everything I had to survive," Vivienne growled. "The anger, the shame, the pain. I know you," the shadow hissed back. "Then you know you can't win without me. I don't want to win with you." Vivienne feinted left, then spun low and swept the shadow's legs. As it fell, she drove her blade through its heart. The figure screamed and disintegrated into smoke. Vivienne fell to her knees, panting. One down. Berengar struggled more. His darker half was relentless, commanding flames and fury that matched his own powers. And worse, it whispered. "You could have saved them," it said, voice echoing in his mind. "The village, the children. You chose knowledge over mercy." Berengar bellowed. "I chose survival." Liar. The shadow hurled a blast of molten energy. But Berengar caught it with a ward of glowing runes, spinning it and firing it back. His enemy exploded into heat and ash. Berengar fell to his hands, coughing, tears in his eyes. "I never forgot them." Lucia's battle was the quietest and the most dangerous. Her shadow did not attack. It circled her, whispering truths she didn't want to hear. "You liked the power. You wanted to feel chosen. You still do." Lucia clenched the orb. "I wanted to protect them." Lie. "I needed to know the truth." Half-truth. "I did what I had to." The shadow lunged, but Lucia stepped forward, pressing the orb to its chest. The light flared, not with violence, but understanding. Memories flashed between them, old lives, past selves, broken lineages, and pain, Lucia whispered. "I forgive you." The shadow screamed, not in pain, but release, and vanished. The three of them stood again in the circle, scarred, tired, changed. Above them, the void shimmered, and the king in ash appeared once more, standing beyond the veil of starlight. He looked at them, not with contempt, nor with approval, but with a quiet finality. "You are ready." The stone circle lowered, descending toward a glowing gate in the dark. Runes flared to life on its frame, spelling ancient names and forbidden truths. Vivienne whispered, "What's behind it?" Berengar answered, "The heart of the world." Lucia nodded, holding the orb close. And the end of everything? The gate opened, and they stepped through. The moment they stepped through the gate, the world shifted. It wasn't a place. It wasn't even space. It was memory, living, pulsing, infinite memory. They stood on a path of glass, suspended over swirling galaxies. Beneath their feet flowed the stories of countless civilizations, rise and fall, love and betrayal, creation and ruin, all playing out like echoes trapped in crystal. Berengar gasped. "It's the Akashic thread." Lucia nodded, eyes wide. "This is where the world records itself." Vivienne frowned. "Then what are we doing here?" a voice answered. "Not with sound, but with thought. You have reached the threshold of truth. Few walk this far. Fewer still return. From the ether emerged a shape, neither man nor beast, but a mosaic of eyes, wings, and flame. a guardian of the threshold. Lucia stepped forward. "We came to end the corruption, to stop the king in ash." The guardian replied, "To do that, you must see the origin, the first breach." It opened one of its many hands and pointed to a shard of light floating ahead. "Go. But know this. What you see cannot be unseen, and what you learn will cost you something." They approached the shard. As they touched it, time collapsed. They stood in a lush, untouched world, a time before humans, before names, a world ruled by harmony between the stars and the earth. But then they saw it. A single being stepping into the world through a crack in reality, a figure of fire and sorrow. The king in ash. He had not been born here. He had fallen here, cast out from some higher realm. His presence tainted everything. The trees twisted, the sky darkened, the rivers screamed. Lucia whispered, "He wasn't evil. He was broken." Vivienne clenched her fists. "And his pain poisoned everything," Berengar said. "He must have tried to return. And when he couldn't, he made this world his prison and his throne." They saw ancient ones try to contain him, using rituals, chains of thought, even sacrifice. But it was Lucia's people, the bloodline of memory keepers, who finally locked him beneath the earth, using the knowledge etched into the stones. But not forever. The vision faded. They were back on the glass path. The guardian remained. "Now you understand?" Berengar asked. "Can we destroy him?" The guardian did not answer at first. Then, "You cannot destroy sorrow. You must transform it." Vivienne scoffed. "We're supposed to heal that monster." Lucia was quiet. "We're supposed to face what made him." A new path opened, leading to the center of the void, where a great heart of burning ash pulsed like a sun wrapped in chains. The guardian spoke one final time. "If you go there, you will not return the same. But you may return whole." The three looked at each other. They stepped forward, toward the heart of sorrow. The descent into the heart of sorrow was like stepping into a wound in reality. The path narrowed, then dissolved entirely. They floated, not through space, but through feeling, anguish, loss, fury, guilt. Each emotion tried to pull them apart, to isolate and consume them. Berengar gritted his teeth. "Don't let it in. It's not ours." Lucia shook her head. "No, it is ours. That's the point. It's using what we carry." Vivienne's voice cracked. "It knows I still blame myself for what happened to Etienne." Lucia reached out, gripping her hand tightly. "Then let's not carry it alone." Together, they pushed on. Eventually, the storm of emotions began to fade, and what lay ahead was a great sphere of flame and ash suspended in silence. The heart. It pulsed like a dying sun, surrounded by fragments of shattered memories, and floating in front of it was him, the king in ash. He was no longer cloaked in shadow. They saw him now, tall, regal, with skin like scorched marble and eyes of deep crimson sorrow. Fire danced from his body like sighs. He looked at them without surprise. "I remember you," he said softly. Lucia stepped forward. "You saw us, through the memories." "Yes, you are echoes I once feared. But now, I'm tired of fighting you." Berengar raised his axe. "We're not here to forgive you. We're here to end you." The king nodded. "Then try." And the battle began. It was not like any fight they'd known. The king did not strike with weapons. He unleashed their worst fears. Berengar saw his village burning again, his family screaming. Vivienne stood alone in an empty world, her voice unheard, her heart abandoned. Lucia drowned in endless visions of failing, every life lost because she wasn't enough. Each time they faltered, the king grew stronger. "This is what I am," he thundered. "All your regrets, all your pain. I am the wound that never heals." Lucia fell to her knees, but not from pain, from understanding. "He doesn't want to win," she whispered. "He wants us to break." Berengar lowered his axe. "Then we fight him. Differently." Vivienne nodded. "No more running." They stood together. Lucia walked forward, unarmed. She looked into the king's eyes. You were cast out. You were alone. But so were we. He trembled. You became the wound because no one would touch it, because you thought you had to suffer. A tear rolled down the king's cheek. Ash fell with it. Vivienne joined her. But pain shared. His pain diminished. Berengar stepped beside them. We don't forgive you, but we understand you. The king's flames began to dim. The sphere behind him slowed its pulsing. He looked at them, truly looked, and for the first time, he didn't see enemies. He saw fellow survivors. He stepped back. I don't know what I am. Without the sorrow. Lucia answered, maybe it's time to find out. The king touched the heart. It unraveled, like ash on the wind. Light burst out, not burning, but healing. The void quaked, then calmed. And when the light faded, the king was gone. Only silence remained. And peace. They stood in silence where the king had once been, the light of the heart slowly dissolving into dust and memory. Around them, the oppressive blackness of the void no longer pressed in. It was vast, still, yes, but it no longer felt like something watching or waiting. It was simply emptiness. Vivienne exhaled for what felt like the first time in hours. Is it over? Lucia looked at her hands, half expecting them to be burned or blooded, but they were clean. I think so. Berengar, ever cautious, turned in a slow circle, scanning for hidden threats. But there were none. No shadows, no whispers, no bleeding walls. Only the quiet echo of their breath and heartbeat. Then the voice came, not cruel, not broken, but ancient and kind. You have done what none before you could. It came from everywhere and nowhere, soft as a breeze. And then a shimmer, a doorway of light appeared before them, hovering just inches above the unseen ground. You are free to leave, the voice said. But more than that, you are free within. Lucia stared at the doorway. What lies beyond? Your world, but not as you left it. Vivienne took a step forward. You mean time has passed? No, the voice replied. You have passed, through fire, through truth, through the grave of memory. The world will still know you, but you are no longer the same. Berengar grunted. Good, the world could use a change. Lucia turned to look behind them one last time. There was nothing but silence, no bodies, no ruins, just the memory of suffering that had finally been let go. She whispered, goodbye, and stepped through. They emerged not into a city or a forest or even the ruins where they had begun, but into a place of light and air, high above clouds, where no wind blew and no sun burned. A space between. The voice echoed once more, final and full of peace. You have carried pain with courage. You have faced the king in ash and chosen not hatred, but understanding. You have broken the curse not by the blade, but by the soul. The light around them began to fold, spinning like silk, and one by one it wrapped them, warm, safe, and whole. Vivienne closed her eyes and saw Etienne smile one last time. Berengar felt the ghost of his daughter's hand in his. Lucia heard her grandmother's voice singing, just as she remembered it as a child. And then the light faded, taking them home. The sky was unfamiliar when they returned. It wasn't the same forest clearing where their journey had begun. The trees were taller, older, no longer twisted by shadow, but proud and strong. Birds sang. The air carried the scent of pine and life. A breeze moved through the leaves like a whisper of welcome. Lucia opened her eyes slowly, blinking in the dappled sunlight. She was lying on soft moss. Not ash, not stone. Her heartbeat was steady. Berengar stood nearby, shielding his eyes. Sunrise? I'd forgotten what it looked like. Vivienne stretched, surprised by the lack of pain in her limbs. How long were we gone? Lucia sat up. I don't think it matters. We're back. That's what matters. They walked to the edge of the hill that overlooked the valley, and there, spread beneath them like a painting, was a world reborn. The ruins were gone. In their place, fields of gold, rivers winding like silver veins, villages nestled peacefully under the morning light. Life had returned, and it was not just the land that had changed. As they descended into the valley, people came, cautious at first, then weeping, then embracing them. Survivors, descendants, those who had once lived under the curse and now woke free. An old man touched Berengar's hand. You're the one from the tales. Vivienne smiled gently. We were never meant to be tales. Just people who didn't give up. Children gathered around Lucia, laughing, not afraid. She knelt and whispered something in their language, and they ran off to play, as if nothing in the world could hurt them. Berengar wiped his eye with a grunt. All right, that's enough emotion for one day. That evening, they sat around a fire. Real this time, not conjured by ghosts or memories. Food was shared, wine flowed, laughter rose into the stars. Lucia looked at her companions and said, It's strange. I thought peace would feel empty, but it doesn't. Vivienne nodded. That's because we earned it. Berengar raised his cup. To the ones we lost, and to the ones who made it. They clinked glasses. For a long while, no one spoke. They simply sat with one another, whole and free, and in the silence between the embers, Lucia heard something. A distant melody, maybe just the wind, maybe more. It sounded like hope. Days passed, then weeks. The land healed, and so did they. Lucia took up residence in a small house by the river. She tended a garden and taught the village children old songs, melodies her grandmother once sang to her, now filled with new meaning. She rarely spoke of the king in ash, but when the winds howled at night, she would sit by the fire, close her eyes and remember the choices they made. Vivienne became a guide and protector. She taught others how to track through the forest, how to read signs in the bark and soil, how to fight if needed, but only if needed. Strength, she said to the young ones, is not in the sword, it's in knowing when not to draw it. As for Berengar, he wandered for a time, never far, but never still. He walked the hills and the valleys, planting trees where the land still mourned. And when people asked why, he said, because something should grow where something once died. But peace, as they all knew, was not the end. It was the beginning. One night, the stars fell. A soft rain of silver light swept across the sky, brighter than fire, gentler than snow. Lucia stood on her porch and watched, breath caught in awe. That night she dreamed again, not of the king, but of the doorway, the same shimmering light, the same silent call. And she knew it had not ended. It had only paused. In the following days, letters arrived, messengers from distant villages. There were whispers again, faint signs, cracked stones that bled light, voices in abandoned wells. The world, it seemed, remembered the curse. Not the king himself, but the mark he left behind. Vivienne brought the letters to Lucia. We might be needed. Lucia looked toward the horizon. I thought we broke it. We did, Berengar answered, stepping from the trees, older now, but no less steady. But when you break a chain, pieces still remain. They stood together once more, not as soldiers, not as heroes, but as keepers of what had been undone. And they knew the world was still healing. But healing never meant forgetting. They gathered one last time beneath the ancient tree, its bark now glowing faintly in the twilight. The villagers called it the heart root, believing it had grown from the ashes of the fallen king. Whether it was true or not didn't matter. What mattered was that it stood tall and alive. Lucia placed her hand on the trunk. She could feel the pulse inside, like a heartbeat, like memory. We are not going back into the dark, she said. Not to fight, not to destroy, but to understand. Vivienne nodded. We walk in as guardians now, not victims. Berengar gave a faint smirk. Speak for yourselves. I never liked being a hero anyway. They laughed, but their eyes were serious. A new doorway had opened. It was not the jagged wound of before, not a tear in reality soaked in malice. This one shimmered like morning fog, gentle and strange. On the other side, colors pulsed slowly, blues and greens, unfamiliar skies, ancient voices calling not in warning, but in invitation. The world was changing again. They stepped through. Lucia first, then Vivian, then Berengar, and the air folded around them like silk. No screams this time, no rush of ash. Only a soft hum like the world taking a breath. What awaited them was not horror. It was a city. Floating towers made of crystal and vine. Walkways suspended over rivers of light. Beings, not quite human, watched from above, not with fear, but curiosity. Some bowed, some smiled. Berengar blinked. Well, damn, this is new. Lucia turned slowly, taking it all in. Maybe this is what was meant to be. Before the king twisted everything, Viviana touched one of the stone panels lining the path. It lit beneath her fingers. It remembers us. They were led by the inhabitants, keepers of knowledge, caretakers of forgotten gates. The beings spoke without words, yet meaning flowed into their minds like streams into a lake. They learned that the world they saved was only one of many, that the darkness had fallen before and would again. But now they were not alone. They were not broken. They were the first in an age to walk through the door and return, and because of them, others would follow. Years later, stories would spread across lands and oceans. Tales not of kings or monsters, but of 3 souls who walked into shadow and emerged as light. Children would gather by firelight and whisper of Lucia the Gentle, Vivian the Blade, and Berengar the Root Walker. And in quiet moments, when the wind stirred the trees just so, some would swear they heard music rising from the ancient tree at the heart of the world. Hope has a sound. It is the sound of footsteps returning home. The story ends here, but the mysteries are probably still somewhere. No one has fully solved them. If you listened until the end, leave a comment sharing your feelings. What did you think of the ending? Which character impressed you the most? And don't forget to like the video if you find it interesting, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next mysterious stories. There are still many journeys waiting to be told. Thank you for joining us tonight. See you again